Hello! You are here for SkepTalk. I am Dr. Blitz, also known as BlitzPhD, and today I'm joined by Adair, physicist extraordinaire. Has anybody ever called you that before?
Definitely not extraordinaire, and if you look at my grad school grades, you would not say that.
Yeah, but it rhymes.
I like that factor, but I also like truth more, so I need to have just the right level of humility on these things.
Look, you can't not call yourself extraordinaire just because you got less than optimal grades in grad school. I'm sure there are other things that make you extraordinaire. Like, I don't know, a combination of a good beard, good t-shirt selection, and books. That's probably pretty extraordinary.
I will take it, yes. And of course, I'm the one person on SkepTalk that believes in God, the one true Godzilla.
Look, I mean, they called him Godzilla for a reason, right? It's because that's probably not true. That's probably completely unrelated.
It's complicated. So in the Japanese, if you go to the katakana, it's Gojira. And when that gets transliterated over English, they could have left it as a J, but a DJ sound together, Godzilla, something like that, could also work. I imagine somebody in marketing said, oh, putting God right there, that probably also makes it sound big and extraordinary. So I'm betting somebody in the marketing department said, there's two ways we could transliterate it. This one will look better in English.
You know, it's interesting because it's almost Polish. If you go look at Polish, you'll find that there are a lot of combinations of letters where it's consonant plus a Z. And that almost makes it's almost like an H sound. So if you have SZ, it's like a sh. If you have CZ, it's a ch. And if you do DZ, it's a zh, like a kind of like a J sound. So it's almost like it was a Polish person who did the transliteration of Gojira. Almost as if. Probably not really what happened, though.
Not likely. My understanding is not too many Poles have lived in Japan. And my understanding as well is when the Americans tried forcing Japan open, and they sent not missionaries, but diplomats out there. They tried speaking to them in Dutch because the earlier Europeans that actually had established themselves in Japan were the Dutch, because they were like, hey, we're not here to proselytize. We just want to trade stuff. Can we just, take some room over here in Nagasaki and, sell you some European stuff? And the Japanese said, okay, that's good for about 200 years. The Americans come with gunboats and say, open up, mothers. And first missionaries came out and said, all right, we'll chat with you. The only European language we have easy access to is Dutch.
Weren't there Portuguese also? Wasn't that a thing?
Earlier, but they had the mistake of being Catholic. And
big mistake.
Japan then basically went to a phase where it was going to go hard closing down. And the proselytizers from Europe were being shut down hard. So when the Protestant Dutch came in and said, hey, our true religion is the almighty dollar, or not sure what the equivalent is in the Netherlands at that time. Yeah. Either way, we're here for gold. We're not here for proselytizing. We believe in hard work. That's our religion. I used to work actually at a Catholic high school, which was the same denomination or variation of the Catholics that went off on these missionary things. The Xaverians was the group that did a lot of international proselytizing, and the ones that ended up getting kicked out, attacked, persecuted by the Japanese government in the 1700s.
There's a lot of interesting history there, especially with, I guess, my understanding is that the Japanese had some periods where they would allow foreigners in to come do stuff, like what you mentioned, the Dutch and I guess the Portuguese as well. Then they closed down pretty periodically and then reopened. I guess the most recent reopening was I guess by the Americans in the late 1800s or something.
More or less, right? Yeah. The mid 1800s is when the Europeans are knocking on the doors. The Americans come in, literally guns pointing into Tokyo Bay, saying, "Hey, we're going to trade."
That's the best way to invoke a trade partnership, right? Just with guns pointing at them.
Yeah. But then Japan was like, okay, we're going to open up. We see there's all this cool tech. Let's do this modernization as fast as we can.
They did it so fast.
Yeah. Well, they had to because they were also looking next door over to what was happening in China and what the Europeans were doing there. And it's like, yeah, those opium wars, we don't want that. So let's make sure we can survive.
Yeah, and they, all things considered, they did do a good job of surviving, arguably a little bit too well. There was some, the opposite of surviving for other people that happened, but that's then they exported anime, and so we forgive them. I think that's how that works. Well,
There's some
look,
yada
so
yadaing happening in the middle there.
yeah, there's like a good 50 years or so, but it'll be fine. But look, everybody, we have an excellent show for you tonight. If you guys decide to make it excellent, that means that you need to call in. If you think that, I don't know, if you want to argue with Aaron about whether Jesus is a myth, that's something that you can argue with Aaron about. I will take a back seat. If you want to talk about how the Bible isn't junk, how there's actual science in the Bible, how the God depicted in the Christian Bible is this gracious moral being, any of these things, if you're a Christian, or honestly, if you're a flat earther, or if you think that, I don't know, that the Big Bang is fake news, whatever it might be, come on and talk to us. You have two people with PhDs in physics. We're obviously like dumb as bricks. Come and prove us wrong and show how our PhDs are not worth anything. The number to call in is 720-619-2288, if I'm reading that correctly. I am reading it off the screen that you're currently watching from. So make sure to call in. Our call lines are open, and they will be open for, I don't know, until we decide to close them, I guess. In the meantime, Aaron, what are you working on?
Too much. So I say that because I have actually two full-time jobs along with the research I do in part of my MIT group. I just came back from the big AAPT meeting in Pasadena. So our research there about, hey, we have a new mathematical technique to try to extract misconceptions from force concept tests that have been given to about 200,000 times. And I did not do that 200,000 times myself, 200,000 different normal physics students doing that. And
This is
combination of
physics
machine learning and
pedagogy research, yeah?
yes, yeah, that's
Okay,
my primary
continue.
area. That's what I did my thesis work in. And weirdly enough, I probably have one of the few, if not the only, modern PhD theses that actually cite stuff in the original Greek because it actually was part of the evidence that I accumulated. So
Cringe, bro.
I, yeah,
Why don't you go retell the Odyssey while you're at it?
uh, rage. Sing Achilles about the rage of the.
Of
Yeah,
course
sorry.
you know it. Of course you know. What's your preferred? You have a preferred translation, don't you?
No, no. I think the best translation is learn Greek and or have half a dozen English translations.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Speaking of, and this is completely off topic. I saw Hades Town
Okay.
2 days ago, and it was spectacular. If you haven't seen it, I actually don't know when it's leaving theaters. They had a 5-day thing. Very, very good. Very, very sad. I mean, like obviously, like the story of Orpheus and Eurydice are like obviously one of the great Greek tragedies, but still very, very good. Would recommend. But anyway, you were saying you have too many things that you're working on. So there's this,
Yeah.
there's some pedagogical work. What else are you doing?
So I am in the wrapping up phase of a book that I'm doing with my co-author on the Exodus tradition. Um, Hopefully that'll be coming out soon. We just got a really nice forward from our mutual friend Joshua Bowen, if you're familiar with him.
I am. I'm not friends with such. I mean, like I'm not enemies. I'm just I know from afar.
Yeah. Because I, have hung out in the circles of both physicists and Bible scholars, I have unusual intersections of circles. So, been friends with him, and he was nice to write the forward for our book, where we'll be, well, you could probably guess what a couple of atheists are going to say about the Exodus tradition, but there were some interesting things that we discovered along the way. The Exodus is the friends we made along the way. No, no.
I mean, it
Terrible
is in some
tagline.
sense, right?
Perhaps so. Let's see here. And
The
also,
majority of the Hebrew Bible is Exodus. Well, the majority of the Torah is not Exodus, but it's the result of the Exodus.
it's the thing that was actually the most interesting was going through and looking at the prophets and realizing where the Exodus was and was not. That was actually some of the interesting signposts for the development of that story. Because, for
Interesting.
example, the early stuff from the early stuff from Isaiah, he doesn't seem to ever refer to or know about an Exodus tradition, except for things that were tacked on later to the book of Isaiah.
Sure.
It seemed to be something known to the northern prophets, but the only southern prophet who seemed to care about it before the Babylonian exile was Jeremiah, and he was mostly just
Interesting.
copy pasting from Hosea. So it's like, oh, this is interesting. It's like uh, the most formative thing from Jewish history wasn't a thing for the Southern Kingdom until basically the very end of the Southern Kingdom.
Yeah, no, I mean that is interesting. Like these kinds of traditions, I guess they are the kinds of things that would develop over time in geographically isolated locations, and it would take time for them to spread, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Well,
so there's
that
that
sounds
going on.
fascinating. So that's going to be coming out soonish, or at least you're going to be probably submitting it somewhere soonish for
Um, we should
publication.
have it out in print, like at least on Amazon. I'm thinking in the next couple of months if things go well.
That's exciting. Is this your
Yeah.
first book?
Depending on how you count it, it's my third.
So is this kind of like counting like the Trinity counting? So it's your third, but also your first, or
No, 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 no. I use correct ordinal and cardinals. I don't do anything like that. But there's one book I'm the single author on. This and my previous book with my friend, we did co-authoring on aliens and religion. So there's three books I'm the main author on, and I've contributed chapters to a bunch of other books.
sure. Okay, sure. So speaking of aliens, what do you make of the UAP stuff in the last few years?
A lot of it has been, I don't, it sounds a little bit mean, but marketing. In that
Yeah.
these are like, okay, they're fuzzy images. If you basically throw a bunch of junk out there, kind of decontextualize it, and say, look at these things that are being kept hidden from us, and then you realize, oh, if you do some geometry, you realize, okay, that's probably a balloon.
Or like a plastic bag drifting along the
Yeah,
wind. Yeah. Okay. I'm
yes,
glad that we're on the same page there.
yeah.
It is somewhat frustrating.
Uh, you know, it's probably the case that they're out there somewhere, but they're too stupidly far away to make the trip.
Well, maybe it's smart for them to be that far away. I mean, all things considered, humans do not have a good track record of meeting new things.
Yeah, but I think it'd probably be if they came here, oh, it would be very much the opposite direction. I One of the fun things I did for the aliens book was okay, just assume the aliens send a craft the mass of the space shuttle to Earth at 80 some percent the speed of light. And I realized, oh, the amount of energy you would need to do that, you would have the same level of energy that we attributed to natural forces. It's like literally like the power of like thunderstorms. It's like, okay, if they can get here, we should call them Thor. They're at that level of energy.
That's a good point. Yeah, I mean, um, we talk about these like extraordinarily fast particles that are, the oh my God particle, right? This was
Hmm.
what is detected in the 80s, I want to say, something like this. Or maybe anyway, it had
I think
something like
more.
the kinetic energy of a baseball. And it was like probably like a helium nucleus or some heavy nucleus or something like that. And, it doesn't sound like a lot. We've all had a baseball chucked at us probably. But consider that this is something that has the mass of a single atom. And you scale that up to, you know, everything roughly house size, perhaps, moving at that same speed with that much energy. And you're talking about, these are, they have the power to destroy a planet if they wanted to.
Oh yeah. And I quickly checked. Apparently, the Oh My God particle was detected in October of 1991 in Utah.
Okay,
I
it
had the
was
impression it was going
91.
to be at a place like Ice Cube down in Antarctica, but nope, I was
Nah, it
very
was
wrong.
long before that, I think. Yeah, no, yeah, so I guess then there was also the wow signal. That was in the 70s. That's what I was confusing it with, right?
Mm-mm. Detected at my alma mater at Ohio State,
I was just in Ohio. That's in Ohio State's in
Columbus.
Columbus? Okay.
Yep.
Well, I would say that sounds great, but I'm sorry that you had to be in Ohio.
Well, I get the feeling other people are seeing that. When I was at the physics meeting, I ran into my old advisor, and I didn't know this, but apparently he moved back to China. So that's how much he wanted to stay in Columbus.
Yeah, I mean, this is a perennial problem lately. I don't think I'm using the word perennial correctly, but this is a constant problem, rather, that people are leaving the United States because it's not a great place to be and do science these days. It's very unfortunate.
Yeah.
And I guess we'll see. The it seems like we're getting the worst of both worlds with the administration combined with the AI stuff. It's just making academia and research in general very, very things are changing very quickly and perhaps in a negative way. Now, we do have some people who
Hmm.
are who have called in. We don't have their screen they haven't been screened yet, at least it doesn't say that they've been screened yet. But we could in principle bring up somebody named well, I guess it's the second person. I perhaps shouldn't call out their name. Do you see them?
Yeah, I
about the flood
see.
and the fossils?
Yes, I see them in the screening room, so I think they are screened.
Oh, okay. It just says unscreened. We could also talk to this person about consciousness being a fundamental particle. Do you have a preference?
Well, I think one of them is in queue, so they're still being screened right now. So in the screening room, that's where we have someone who's already been checked, unless our producer is telling me I'm very wrong.
Uh, maybe? I don't actually understand how this. It says that they're both here. It says that they're both
Yeah.
unscreened, as far as I can tell. Let's bring up the person about the flood and the fossils, shall we?
Let's do our best.
All right.
Yeah.
Adrihel, you're
Yeah.
live on the line. How's it going, Adrihel?
Pretty good. Nice to meet you. Both
Likewise.
are new to me.
Well, now you know me. Now you know Aaron, I hope. By the way, it is quite strange, Aaron, because my brother's name is Aaron as well. But that's neither here nor there. So Adriel, you mentioned that you have a question about fossils and the flood. What's up?
Okay, well, I'm not a Christian anymore, but there is some kind of movement that tries to fit the fossil record on the Noah's Ark story. So, what do you say about that? How do you respond?
Well, I don't know about you, but I kind of think that if Noah's flood was a thing that happened, and the fossilization that we see is a result of Noah's flood, then it seems like that we would expect to see in the same fossil layer or in very nearby fossil layers, basically a jumble of all of the bones of the things that died, including people, including rabbits, including presumably birds and fish, which died as well. All of these things should be in roughly the same fossil layer, if it were the case that they all died as a result of the flood. That is, dinosaurs supposedly were killed off by the flood, right? And most of the humans were killed off by the flood. So why don't we see any dinosaur bones, any fossils, in the same place that we see the human bones? Why are they always separated by large chunks of rock? Why are they not in the same layer? Unless somebody can explain that to me, I'm just not sure I'm convinced that the flood can explain all of the fossils that we see.
Okay.
And while I'm not a geologist, one of the interesting things that I remember back in my home state of Michigan, you go through the various layers, and among those layers is a layer of material that are known as evaporites, which literally is a layer that you have something watery, and then the water evaporates away, leaves that deposit behind like salts, and then a new layer develops on top of that. If this were laid down by a flood, somehow the flood has to come in, dry away, and then a new flood has to immediately come in to then cover that. And that is very much not consistent with one flood, but it's impossible with one flood. You can't have the flood come in, create all the layers, and also evaporate at the same time. So we know that these layers have to have some level of temporal sequence. And how do creationists respond to that? Run away.
Adriel,
Does that
you
help?
there?
I'm sorry, the phone went black. Hello?
Yes,
Can you
we
hear
hear you.
us?
Hello? Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you.
So, I'm sorry.
You're okay.
What if they say something like, dinosaurs' bones weigh more than human bones because they made of stone or something?
Well, it's not clear that that's the case. I'm no paleontologist, but I vaguely remember reading quite recently that we actually know that T-Rex had hollow bones like birds do. They're not like literally hollow, but they're porous like birds do. So in fact, I would expect that they would be less dense. I could go check what the average density of a dinosaur bone is, but like it's just not the case. I mean, they're all made of the same material. Why would it be the case that dinosaur bones would be more dense?
On top of that, we also
Maybe
have
because
plant
they are
material
bigger?
in these various layers. And if it's the case that like somehow the layers are like sorted by density or by weight, why would you find plant matter in these various layers? I'm pretty sure leaves are less dense than bone, and yet we can find plant-like stuff in very old layers, in much more recent layers. Uh, Basically, anytime you realize there's more than one kind of animal, these sorts of arguments fall apart.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, like
Makes
you
sense.
have pterodactyl. Okay, so I did just double check, by the way. Human bone density and T-Rex bone density are basically the same. Like they're within, the range of these bone densities are the same. They overlap. So it's just, not clear that there'd be a density differential. So, and also there were like Archaeopteryx bones, right? And they definitely had really thin baby bones compared to humans. So why would they be lower?
Okay. Well, I think it's all for me.
Well, all right, Adriel. Anything else that you want to bring up with him, Aaron?
I do want to note. Let me just also give a bit of reference in that, I'm definitely no geologist, but one of our mutual hosts on the line, Erica Gutsit Gibbon, she did this two-part, 2-hour each session on how we learned how old the Earth is and how we knew that there wasn't a giant flood. She has a giant, 2-hour video for that, another 2-hour video for basically the history of how we realized that creatures evolve. And that could also tell you why already by the 1830s, geologists realized, you know what, this giant worldwide flood thing doesn't make sense. So how we knew that this idea needed to be buried 200 years ago.
Okay. So, if I can change a little bit the topic,
Yes,
or
you
maybe
can, but can
I
you
don't
please? Yes, you can, but if you can you please mute the stream or perhaps mute your speakerphone or something because we're hearing a lot of background noise.
better?
Much better, thank you. So you said you wanted to change the topic. Go ahead.
So, what if they say something like the evolution is a lie, is a myth or a story made for Charles Darwin?
That's a cool claim, but they'd have to bring up evidence. The point is look, and I hate to do the appeal to authority thing, the appeal to expertise, but at the end of the day, if you go ask biologists whether they think that, and biologists are well-educated people, right? If you go ask biologists whether they think that evolution's a thing, 100% of them, maybe not 100%, 99.9% of them will say, of course it's a thing. Of course evolution is real. So if you're going to make the claim that it's all made up, you have to explain why all of these extremely educated people are somehow wrong about this thing that should be obvious to them, right? If it was wrong, then you have all these smart people who have spent their whole lives dedicated to studying this. How can you explain why they all got it wrong? That is something that anytime anybody brings up something that is in direct conflict with the scientific consensus, they need to confront that. And so in order to do so, you would expect an enormous amount of evidence that would have to be overcome. So I don't know, they'd have to provide strong evidence, which they're not going to do, of course. Why is this little curl of hair sticking out? Come on, go away.
I will also add the best way to tell how good a theory is when the people against it have to actually use it. So if you try going at the literature of young Earth creationists, the people who think the Bible is 100% accurate on everything, the Earth is 6,000 years old, there was a giant flood, one of the things that they have to do to explain Noah's Ark is to say there were only a few thousand species at most to fit them on the boat. And then when they came off, there was massive increase in diversity afterwards. And so it's the creationists who have to basically propose hyper-evolution. So evolution exists only in the way that they want it to, which really shows that they are taking everything they can and trying to run with it and hoping nobody catches them. And unfortunately, they were caught before we even threw the ball, to use a somewhat sport metaphor. Oh, Adriel, yeah, if you're using the phone app, you basically have to tap your screen every time you want to talk again. It goes to sleep.
I'm sorry. Yeah. So, just for the sake of argument, let's call it like a fan service. Instead of making the authority, can you say one of the many things about why evolution is a fact?
Yeah, I mean, the example I like to point out, and people who are more educated on the subject of evolution would know a lot better than I would, but probably the most iconic success of evolution was the prediction in the, I don't know, the early 1900s that if indeed animals evolved from sea creatures first, land animals evolved from sea creatures, then we would expect to see some sort of transitionary species, some species that is, looks like it's kind of can walk around on land, but also still kind of a fish. And this was predicted by Darwinian evolution. And in the 90s, I guess it was the early 90s, a team of scientists basically said, okay, we should actually see if we can make a prediction about this. So they're like, okay, if this thing exists, then it should be in this layer, in this kind of rock, this deep down. And so then they plotted out all of the possible places that those criteria could be matched in the United States or around the world. And they went and they started digging. And in the late 90s, they found exactly what they expected to find, a kind of half fish, half land animal thing called a Tiktaalik, exactly where they expected it to be. And so, generally the way that we test a scientific theory is that it makes a prediction and then you go out and you test that prediction. You see if that prediction comes true. And that's exactly what happened in the case of the Tiktaalik. And we found this transitional fossil. And now of course, this is not a unique thing. We found hundreds of these things, but we found this transitional fossil in the fossil record exactly where and when we expected it to be. So I don't know. That seems like a remarkable success. And we wouldn't have been able to make that prediction, or that prediction shouldn't have come true if evolution was not true.
Okay. Well, I think that is all. Thank you for answering the call.
Of course. Thanks for being here, Adriel.
I had to
look.
What
do you think? Yeah, go ahead.
I had to look, and I was wondering how many specimens of Tiktaalik have been discovered, considering just how lucky it was to find that thing in the first place. But I just quickly Googled it,
60,
and apparently
right?
more than 60 specimens. So it's like, wow.
Yeah. It's like, I mean, now that we know what it is and what to look for, it's probably a little bit easier to find. But the fact that nobody had noticed it before was kind of remarkable.
I just was imagining that one creationist response would be, it's like, oh, you just found a single mutant. It's like, nope, we found a whole population.
Yeah, exactly. Like, if it was just one, then maybe you could, dismiss it by calling it just a mutant or something. But it clearly isn't just one. And also, we don't even have to look very far. Amphibians exist, and they are basically fish land animals. So I don't know why it would be so surprising that such a thing would exist in the fossil record. I mean, they may as like the Tiktaalik may as well be like a weird salamander thing. We do have another caller, but we have another atheist caller. So look, if you think that God exists because of the Bible or the Quran or the Torah, or maybe I don't actually know a lot about the various Hindu descriptions of the divine, I know that there are some Buddhist descriptions that involve a theology rather than just a philosophy. If you have opinions about any of these things, if you are a theist of any kind, feel free to call in and talk to us. Maybe you'll convince us. Maybe today's the day. You'll convince the two, well, perhaps not overqualified, but two of the most overqualified people on this show. Actually, that's probably not true. There's probably, it depends on what you consider qualification, right? But we've definitely been to school for too long.
You both have PhDs in math. I think you're definitely both the most overqualified.
Most overqualified, certainly overqualified. Most overqualified indicates that there is a ranking of overqualification. Apparently you can't get a job at a Starbucks if you're too qualified.
That doesn't seem necessarily true, because my wife also has a PhD and she did some Starbucks stuff a few years ago. In fact, she's actually at work right now making cookies. So her PhD has taken her to sweet places.
See what you did there. They pay well these days.
And you have to pay well just to afford rent here in Boston. I should also note, this is SkepTalk, so yes, we want to talk about God, theism, but also some of the other spooky topics. So ghosts, aliens, Bigfoot. I'm hoping we have one person who calls in who believes in the flat Earth is held up by Bigfoot. I want that caller to come in tonight.
Well, is this a caller that you know about?
No, but I assume just by random chance there has to be one person who believes that.
No, but there are people who think that it's on the back of a giant turtle. No, on the back of elephants, each of which are standing on a turtle? Is that how? Or is the turtle standing on the elephants?
I believe it's turtle, 4 elephants for basically the cardinal directions, and then the flat Earth on top of the elephants.
So turtle's at the bottom, and the elephants are on top of the turtle, and then the flat Earth is on top of the elephants. Right. So where's hell?
Well, I think that particular cosmology is Hindu, and they don't really have hell in the same kind of way as
at least not below
Abrahamic. Yeah.
Yeah. You know,
it makes me wonder. Like, I mean, there are many different hell concepts. If you want a nice fiery hell, that comes partially out of Zoroastrianism. So sure. I have to see, what is the ancient Persian cosmology? I don't know.
I mean, there's also the Bajorans. They have the fire caves. Those who know will know.
Those are real.
Those are real, yeah. And like you can fall into them, and then you have like a trippy experience where like you have a cosmic battle, and then one of you just gets sent off to like heaven, I guess, and the other one is trapped in the fire caves forever. Also, imagine just having fire caves, just hanging out on your planet, and just nobody goes there.
Hey, I'm still waiting for Cisco to come back.
Maybe, but there's no way that Avery Brooks is coming back. He's done. He's done with Star Trek.
They kind of actually alluded to that in the most recent season of Star Trek Academy. Where,
I haven't seen it, so no spoilers.
Okay, I'll just say this much. One of the characters is really interested in Cisco, and apparently Avery Brooks did give his thumbs up to the script.
I understand
I won't say anything.
I understand he's just having a good time teaching drama or something somewhere.
Jazz, I think, actually. Yeah.
Oh, that makes sense, too. Dude's whole personality is just jazzy.
Yeah. Jazz and war crimes.
For those who don't know, by the way, we're talking about Star Trek Deep Space Nine, which is, you know, the best Star Trek. I will take no questions, but it is arguably more niche than Picard's Star Trek. Look, yeah, so we can bring on Susan. I mean, we do have 2 physicists here. The question is about consciousness being a fundamental particle. So, but keep in mind, we are looking for people who have beliefs about things. So, Susan, you are on the line with Blitz and Aaron. How's it going?
I'm doing okay. So, first off, DS9 is the best Star Trek, although
correct answer.
I got my favorite is always going to be Next Generation, just because that's what I grew up on. But DS9 is objectively the best, and Kai Wynn may be just the most exquisitely written villain of all time. I just
would you be surprised to know? Would you be surprised to learn that she was in less than 10 episodes?
Really?
Yeah.
She seems so ubiquitous.
I know.
She has such a huge impact.
Yep.
Wow.
I think it's 7. It's either 7 or 9, and that's a good joke. But yeah, she is in surprisingly few episodes. Ducat is also in surprisingly few episodes.
Now. That's crazy.
All right, Aaron's going to fact check me, and I'm going to be proven wrong.
At least Google says 14 episodes.
Okay, I was off, but order of magnitude, right?
It's still a surprisingly low amount.
It is surprisingly low, considering the show ran for like 140 episodes or something like that.
Yeah.
But anyway, what you got for us?
Yeah, so I'm by no means asserting that I believe in this or that this is true in any way, but if you've ever read Philip Pullman's His Dark Materials series, it starts with a golden compass. It's kind of based around this idea that the scientists in that world discover a way to detect this formerly unknown fundamental particle that seems to be attracted to conscious beings or created by conscious beings or hangs around items that humans have worked with, but not so much around just like regular nature stuff and animals. And so basically, it's like the idea is that consciousness is a fundamental particle, and it's kind of like the coalescing, just like coincidental coalescing of those particles is what kind of creates the first God mind, which then, takes credit for everything else in the universe, and says that he created it all. So I was just curious what you guys thought of that idea. I found it just incredibly compelling, and like he uses it to explain why some people see ghosts. It's actually just like concentrations of this dust that, and I don't know. I was just wondering what two actual physicists thought of the idea from science fiction.
Well, it is fiction. Look, so there's a thing that Sean Carroll said at some point.
Something like that. I wonder, like, what would happen if we were to make that discovery? Because in the books, of course, the church immediately says, "Oh, well, this is the physical manifestation of sin, and we have to stamp it out." So yeah,
there's a thing that. So there's a thing that Sean Carroll said, which if you know me, I'm a Sean Carroll stan. There's a thing that Sean Carroll said, which basically amounts to, we know all of the physics that can exist at ordinary temperatures, pressures, and densities, right? All of that physics is done. Mm-hmm. So if you're talking about something that can exist, like, a random collection of consciousness particles that can exist and interact with the world around it at these temperatures, we know all of those things. There's not really room for more. So, maybe you would say, well, okay, these aren't ordinary, so they have to be really, really hot. Well, then how can they form just randomly? How can you get this random collection of consciousness particles without the particles decaying into stuff that we could see?
Aren't we discovering new particles? I mean, like the Higgs boson and such?
Right, but that's not at ordinary temperature, pressures, and densities, right? The thing is the Higgs boson, the reason why we hadn't seen it before is because it's not stable, and it decays in like a billionth of a second. And so you just wouldn't be able to have these stable configurations of matter that are like ghosts, just kind of like randomly appearing made out of these consciousness particles.
Darn.
To be fair, there are some particles we're looking for that, might exist, that might have some interesting properties. I'm rooting for the axion, but no proof of it as of yet. But it is worth noting, it's something I've actually been strangely thinking about because I've had some interesting discussions with panpsychists about everything being conscious, but then I realized for consciousness, it seems like you need time, which means whatever has consciousness must have mass, because anything without mass would be traveling at light speed and have no duration, and therefore not have any time experiences. So if there is a consciousness particle, it must have some sort of mass. Then we have to say now it has to interact with probably the Higgs mechanism to get that mass. If it's going to be a fundamental particle, how is that going to work? Most importantly, if there is, for example, a fifth fundamental force, it would have effects that we can actually start ruling out. And if there is a fifth force, it is so extremely minor. It's so subtle that it can't even be picked up by our most sensitive instruments. And when it comes to our brains are much less sensitive than the detectors at CERN. And I had a chance to work on the Atlas detector. That was a big machine to look for really tiny little things. And if that thing isn't detecting consciousness particles or moral particles or anything else floating around, then it's probably too subtle for our brains to pick up.
Okay, well, thanks for raining on my parade. I mean, I figured the answer would be something like that. I was just kind of curious how you guys would pick it apart, because I just really liked the idea. I do highly recommend the books. They're very, very good.
I mean, look, good science fiction is written so that it's plausible, not so that it can't be dismantled. Like, Project Hail Mary is a recent example.
Absolutely.
Like there is the central conceit that like somehow these like spoilers, by the way, that astrophages eat neutrinos or whatever, or they like poop out neutrinos or however it works. Like if you think about that for 2 seconds, that's like obviously nonsense. But once you get past that, then like everything else works. So like, good science fiction often takes like 1 or 2 pieces of nonsense that you just have to accept. And then you can build good stuff off of it. But,
Yeah. I mean, you build, you build the actual, like how the universe would interact with such a thing. Now, when Andy Weir wrote The Martian, though, didn't he consult with like a whole bunch of scientists to make sure that everything that he wrote in that novel was scientifically possible?
I'd believe it.
My memory is that it was, in a sense, first like chapters of it were like going like out on the internet, so it was getting a lot of feedback live from a large audience. And even then, there were some conceits that had to be done. So like when it comes to conceits, literally the first scene in the book in the movie, the windstorm that's so strong that they have to escape because it's too great. The Martian atmosphere is so thin that even a strong wind probably wouldn't knock you down. So it definitely wouldn't like take down the station or their ship. So already they had to basically make the storm hurricane level in strength, which Mars isn't able to produce because of how wimpy its actual atmosphere is. Yeah. So it's like, yeah, everything's like accurate except the beginning.
Yeah, right. And that's the same thing with Project Hail Mary. Everything's accurate except the beginning.
Yeah. That's you gotta take that one spark of imagination and then build off of that. Well, yeah. Okay. I guess I do have one other question. I got Forrest and Shannon to weigh in on this earlier. What's cooler, Ligers or Tigons?
I don't have a strong opinion about it. I want to say Ligers just because they sound cooler, but probably not a good reason.
I'm probably partial towards Ligar simply because that was the first term of that variant I heard. Seeing it in Napoleon Dynamite, even though I wasn't even a fan of the movie at the time.
So true.
But the name is in my head and it can't get out.
Yeah, actual Ligers aren't anything like Napoleon Dynamite, but it would be cool if they were. Yeah. Okay, well, thanks, guys. Yeah, I guess that's all I had for you.
All right, well, thanks for being here, Susan.
Yep, have a good one.
Well, it looks like the line, if you will, is empty. We have no call-ins, which means, I guess, all of the theists who would regularly watch the show, and maybe the conspiracy types, maybe the a little bit out there types, all of these people who would regularly watch the show and call in, I guess they're too afraid to bring their claims to two accredited scientists. Which I understand, it's very intimidating, very scary.
It seems like they're happy to chat with you vociferously on TikTok. I've seen you clipping some of your fun there.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, like let's be real. The people on TikTok generally have minimal to no self-awareness. And so they don't know what they don't know. I think the audience skews younger. I think that people who are in the 30+ bracket tend to be more worried about looking dumb on the internet than people who are between the ages of 18 and 25. And that's the primary audience that TikTok gets, as far as I'm aware.
I'm also just thinking back, if particles actually could have consciousness and you just put them in place and then you give consciousness to things, we could finally then have talking polar bears. And so we could make some more of the Dark Material books work. I only say that just because I remember when the first Dark Material movie came out, 20, 30, whatever years ago it was, I don't even know now. I went and saw that with my girlfriend at the time, and I tried my best Ian McKellen polar bear voice to say, I will be your steed and we can ride, and silly fun after watching the movie.
Here's the thing. I don't think if polar bears almost certainly are conscious. They're large mammals and they have big brains, so they almost certainly have some degree of consciousness. The thing is it doesn't matter how smart a polar bear is. Their anatomy wouldn't let them talk. They don't have the musculature and the vocal folds or whatever.
Oh no, I think they're just shy. They just need a few drinks.
Have you ever seen the show We Bear or Three Bear? Is it We Bear Bears or Three? Yeah, it's We Bear Bears. It's a very cute cartoon about 3 bears that are.
Never even heard of it.
Well, consider it.
Okay.
All right. Well, so we do have someone in the call queue, an atheist who has questions about the afterlife or thoughts about the afterlife. We can bring them on. But do keep in mind, we are prioritizing people who are theists. We are prioritizing people who are perhaps atheist, but think the earth is flat for who knows why. If you think that ghosts are real, if you think that Sasquatch stole your dad's girlfriend, we will prioritize you. And we'll give you counseling if you think that Sasquatch stole your dad's girlfriend, because that's probably you need some counseling for that. So let's bring up Bridget from California.
Hello.
Bridget, you were on the air.
Because...
Yeah, go ahead.
Hello. I only called
The
because you
line.
said
I'm supposed
the
to
queue
say
was
you're on the
empty.
line. I'm
So,
sorry. You're fine.
I mainly only called this time because you said the queue was empty, and I was like, okay, well, I thought mine was adjacent enough where I thought it would be reasonable, and I wasn't like jumping in when there was a bunch of people that were what you were looking for.
Yeah, so you said you had some thoughts about the afterlife?
Yeah, well, because like I said, I'm an atheist, and I'm definitely more on your side of the park, or at least I think I would be. I'm definitely not as educated as either of you. But my 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 question is more about how I have so many people in my life that are so convinced about an afterlife, and they're so and they'll be so convinced on weird reasoning that they'll sometimes tell me, and that I can understand is somewhat bad reasoning, and I can't. And okay, so like, to give one example, my sister one time told me that she believes in an afterlife, not for like religious reasons. She's not like Christian or anything specific like that, but she wants to believe in an afterlife. And her father mentioned to her one time the whole just premise of like matter can't and energy can't be like destroyed, they just only transfer form. So she's like, oh, so when I die I'll just transfer form, so that's like reason for an afterlife. And I'm just like shaking my head, and I'm like, I can explain very clearly why that's not a reason for you to believe that you're going to still be, well, that's not going to be like a reason why you should believe you're going to be like still conscious after you die, and you're going to like reunite with all your loved ones, because I know that's what you're thinking. And her response to me saying that is just like, she looks at me and she goes, why are you so close-minded? And I'm like, I don't at that point, it's well, I guess I'll just throw the ball back to your court at that point. Like, what am I supposed to say to that?
Aaron, do you have something to say? Because I would go ahead.
I would say the easiest thing in response to the idea that because of energy conservation or matter conservation that you survive your death is take a computer, take your phone, smash it with a hammer. Where did the apps go? I would say they don't work anymore. They don't exist anymore in any reasonable way, even though there's still just as much matter in total. The arrangement of matter is the reason that the phone works. The arrangement of brain matter is the reason I have consciousness. You fry my brain, it loses oxygen, things like that. I expect it to break down, and just because there's still the same amount of stuff, that arrangement of stuff is destroyed in the same way I destroy my computer, it no longer has its files or its functionality.
Yeah, agree. That's what I wanted to tell her in that case. I don't know, I guess that's what's so frustrating is that okay, admittedly, I thank you for that example, because I didn't think of it.
Actually, something now has gone terrible into my head. My wife was telling me that one of her favorite films is Reanimator. And that also is cases where the matter is all there, and with an injection, it comes back to life, but in that form. So like a cat that was run over, but injecting it, and now the cat comes back to life, but still run over version of that cat. That sounds like a terrible way to have an afterlife. So careful what you wish for. If you think just the if the arrangement of matter doesn't matter, sorry for the double use, but I'm pretty sure you don't want to be existing as either ashes from cremation or what you looked like after a car accident or all those sorts of terrible things. On the other hand, Jeffrey Combs is an Reanimator, so maybe it's worth it overall.
You're telling me Shran was in Reanimator?
You mean Shran and so many other Star Trek
Brunt,
characters?
FCA,
Yes.
Wayoon.
Many Wayoons.
Many Wayoons. I think 8 at this point.
So I will
go ahead.
I will thank you because your example was better than the example I was thinking of back when I was trying to tell her. But I guess is like the thought topic is how do you deal with people that look at this sort of like it's sort of this not anti-belief, but this sort of like, I don't know, this sense of like, because even that framing she threw at me, like closed-minded, I got so mad at her for that, because I remember telling her, I realized that so many people throw out closed-minded as you've come to a different conclusion than me, if you know what I mean, where it's not that you're actually closed-minded, it's that like I've asked you to look into this topic and you didn't reach the same conclusion than me, so I'm going to call you closed-minded, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it seems like she's bought in to this idea, and is just trying to come up with some sort of justification to believe it, not to convince herself. I think you said that this was your aunt, right? But rather to convince other people, because they've already convinced themselves, right?
Yeah. Well, she wasn't trying to convince other people. It's just she was telling me that was her reason, and I've always told her that I'm this type of person that I believe what's true, and she was telling me, and I was just kind of having that moment where I go like, bullshit, and she's like, well, wait, bullshit, and I don't know, I think she wanted to defend herself for a moment, and I don't know, and then I guess with the story with my sister, the part that the part that hits me with her, and the weirdest part, which I guess this is more psychology than physics, is that she actually never let me explain, because I think she hit a moment where she told me, where I think she actually believed I could convince her, and as a result she told me no, she didn't want to hear the explanation because she was scared I could convince her. And I it's more of a psychology thing, I know, but I don't know. At that point, it was something that going with this idea of skepticism. It's like, how do we handle, how do we go forward if we have people that, something like an afterlife, I guess, is more benign, but like, how do we move forward if we can't get people to agree on like how reality works,
Sometimes it just doesn't matter, right? Like it just doesn't matter. If I have an aunt or a sister or a grandparent or whatever who believes some wacky thing, if they weren't hurting anybody, it's probably not worth the frustration that the conversation will inevitably lead to.
That's true, but sometimes it does matter. So that is, I suppose, where the question really leads to, right? Because I mean, isn't that sort of like what this would be about? Is that like, well, that's why you'd be talking to theists here tonight, right? It's like it's not about the
it's
times.
A matter
it
of
doesn't matter. It's about
picking your. It's a matter of picking your battles.
Yeah.
So if it's actually like causing problems, it's causing friction. If this person is pushing this and is being intransigent, then pushing back against that might become reasonable. But necessarily going out like you're a heresy hunter that may not be a reasonable thing, at least not the best use of your time and to stress yourselves and your family in those cases. Just to put an example for this, while I'm a non-believer, my mother is a believer, but when she tells me about her version of Catholicism, I realize, oh, her version of Christianity is better than the Pope's. I'm not going to have
well,
a
hold
problem
on. The
with this.
current Pope is pretty chill. He did the 6-7 thing.
True. But as far as I know, the current Pope will still say, I'm going to hell. My mother is making sure I get a pass.
Cringe Pope. Not even cool because he can do this.
That is one thing that I have found about people in the faith space that I still find wacky when I tell them, where they have this moment of like, where I have to ask, like, so can you tell me the attributes of how you see God? And they're like, what do you mean? It's God. I'm like, yeah, but every time I ask that question, I get different attributes.
Yeah, clarity is important. Generally, as far as theists are concerned, you'll often have, for as many theists, you will have that many conceptions of a god, and that's fine. I mean, it's exactly what you expect for a character that's made up, right? Everybody has their own conception of what that character is. Like, just go look at AO3 or something, and you'll see a whole bunch of different conceptions of various characters from fiction. Each author will have a different conception of that character.
Oh yeah, no, actually just on a slightly funny or just a slightly humorous note, I realized recently there was a small moment when I was a child where I still believed in Santa Claus after I had become an atheist. There was like a small window.
It's puzzling.
Where I had become an atheist, but I still believed in Santa Claus. And I thought that I didn't realize it at the moment, like, because I was never a Christian. I was raised in kind of a weird way, I guess, because like I was never told about anything religious. Like when I was a child, I didn't know what Christianity was. I was just told nothing. Obviously, I kind of knew, just raised in America, I hear people talking about Christianity, but I didn't really know a whole lot except for the fact that I was weird for not going to church, obviously. But so obviously I wasn't Christian in that sense. But I thought God was real, so obviously I wasn't an atheist because it's like all these people were talking about him, so I just presumed that was a thing. So it was around the time I was a teenager that I took a course on mythology in high school, and as an elective, and when I saw all these different origins of the cosmos from different mythologies, that was when I was like, oh, okay, got it.
Yeah, I mean, it turns out taking a course on, say, comparative religion or world religions or world mythology or whatever is very very good way to realize that what you believed, or perhaps what your surrounding family, society, whatever believe, is actually just fairly common historically. It's not particularly unique or particularly true.
Yeah, that's why it was all. I'm not surprised to hear that. That was my experience as a 14-year-old, 15-year-old. I don't remember the exact age, but it wasn't until like a year or two later that I stopped believing in Santa Claus, which I know is a weird. I was a weird person, but it wasn't until recently that I realized that there was that small overlap where I had become an atheist before I'd stopped believing, which I just thought's a weird story.
It is a weird story. But Bridget, we are going to let you go because we only have so much time. But thank you so much for being here. Hopefully we answered your questions.
Theist.
Yeah, well, no, we didn't.
Yeah,
we didn't. But we're going to solicit some. But it's very good to have you. But there are certain things that we're looking for, And anecdotes are not that unless it's from a theist. Then we do, and then we'll yell at them for it. But thank you so much for being here, Bridget.
Take care. Bye.
So, while as lovely as Bridget was, we are looking for it's the line, right? It's SkepTalk. It's not friend talk. Not allowed to be friendly. Well, okay, you are allowed to be friendly. In fact, we encourage being friendly.
Oh no friends here. This is the no friend zone.
Right, yeah. So don't be friendly to Aaron. Definitely don't be friendly to Aaron. Don't be friendly to Aaron. Aaron's bad cop. I'm good cop. I've been told by the handlers from on high that I should tell you, all of you lovely listeners, to click like. You know that little button that has like a thumbs up? I don't know where it is on, if you're watching on your phone, whatever it is, click it. It's somewhere here-ish, maybe? You realize that your arm is not on screen, right?
I was looking at the wrong screen to figure out where I was pointing.
Right. Yeah. So it should be somewhere. What do the Green Brothers say down in the doobly-doo? It should be somewhere there. So click that, and then maybe we will get some people who actually want to call and talk about the subject. Whether aliens exist, whether the Earth is flat, whether the flood happened, whether God's real, any of these lovely topics. So make sure that you click like, and if you don't, I will be personally disappointed in you. I don't know all of you, but I will find you, and I will be disappointed in you. What does it go? How does it go? I don't know who you are. Something. I will find you. Liam Neeson always struggling to have a family or something.
I don't quite know where the rates are. That's a little bit out of my pay grade. On the other hand, I did do some other important searching about the cartoon you mentioned. It's called We Bare Bears.
We Bare Bears, yeah. There we go.
And I'm going to have to add it to my watching because I've been very poorly learning Chinese, and sometimes I need the easier stuff. And I got too annoyed trying to watch Peppa Pig in Chinese, but there is apparently a Chinese version of We Bare Bears.
Really? Okay, so how many languages do you speak? Or can you understand? Because apparently you know Greek. Ancient Greek.
Not conversationally. I only know enough Greek that I impressed one Greek last year at the physics conference because I saw her phone vibrating, and I realized it was her husband because the phone said agape, and I realized, well, everyone knows that Greek word.
Sure.
So she was impressed that I could recognize that much Greek on her phone when it was just vibrating. But German is my best foreign language, but I don't feel like I'm fluent in anything other than English.
I'm certainly not fluent in anything other than English. Which, in principle, I should have learned a language. I lived in Europe for almost 3 years, but I chose not to. Chose is a strong word. Attempted and then gave up would be probably a more correct rendering of what happened. I'm not good with languages. Never happened.
I had to start just kicking myself because I decided I didn't want to be monolingual anymore. It also didn't
help. This is a point of pride.
It also didn't help that my first long-term girlfriend, she was German and absolute genius, physics genius in general, and she was able to correct some of my English pronunciations of a few words.
They'll do that. They'll do that.
So
Europeans will do that.
So it's like, I cannot just stay this monolingual American beta male, and I need to up my game.
Good use of Greek, by the
way. True. And just in general, I found having these resources has been useful for both, whether it's my stuff with biblical studies or just wanting to chat with my wife and her family.
Yeah, okay. And I take it that based off of your desire to learn Chinese, your wife is Chinese.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, makes sense.
And then learning Japanese because other book project is Godzilla focused, so I need to have at least know how to say kaiju and other important words.
Have you seen what was it? Was it Godzilla -1?
Oh yes.
It was so good. I think it was the first foreign language film I actually saw in an American theater.
Oh. My wife took me to that for my birthday. This was the first Godzilla movie that she ever watched. And we were both like, that was so good. And especially because my wife's PhD is in English, I'm like, you clearly have gotten something out of this. I've gotten something out of this. Let's work together on a project together. So very slowly, there's a book project trying to be turned out of this. And there's a market for Godzilla scholarship, and I'm trying to add to it.
Is there?
Yes.
What is it? Is it at Comic-Cons?
No. I mean, like academic scholarship. Like
I assumed as much. I was just making fun of it.
There is a Godzilla Fest. In fact, there's going to be a Kaiju Fest here in Salem in a couple weeks. I'm going to definitely go to that.
Okay, if you have an opinion about kaijus, how do you feel about Pacific Rim?
I am so happy that movie exists. I just wish the sequel didn't.
Yeah, that's a fairly reasonable take. It could have been so good, but what's his face wasn't the director.
Yeah, so, Guillermo del Toro.
Yeah, that's his face. That's the face of the person that I was referring to. Well, yeah. Look, so I just want to remind everybody that you should be clicking the like. I don't know how effective it is. I should actually pull up the line. Like I should just pull up the YouTube thing. But I don't know how effective it is for me to yell at you to like the live, because if you haven't,
it does make a difference.
Does it really? Okay, so we have 489 likes and there are 782 people watching. So look, there are two options to explain this. First option, of course, is that 290 of you or so are just like lazy assholes and you just haven't clicked the like button. Like that's option one, which like is believable, but I'd rather not believe it. The second option is that there are 290 people who don't like this show because they disagree with us, because they're theists, they believe in Bigfoot, they believe in UFOs or the flat earth. In which case, why the hell haven't you called in? At the moment, we have 0 unfriendlies. Not even any friendlies that also disagree. We have 0. So either you haven't liked the live because you're lazy, or you haven't liked the live because you should call in. Those are the only two options. This has been deductively established at this point. So we do have Maureen, who has a question about 70s tech still being operational on the Voyager 1. Do you want to take that call?
We got him.
Okay, let's bring up Maureen.
Hello.
Maureen, hi. Hello. How's it going? You're on the line.
Fine. How are you guys?
As good as I can be.
Yeah, kind of quiet today, eh? Maybe all the Christians are off at summer camp.
That's where I would be.
Yeah, I just wondered what you thought of, Voyager 1's still out there, and apparently it's sending some sort of information back. I'm not sure what kind of information or how useful it is, but what kind of powering did it use that it's still around now?
My understanding is they basically took a big lump of radioactive stuff and then used that heat that it generates to power the thing. And it's running out.
Oh,
I actually had a plutonium core, right?
Yeah, I think it was some form of plutonium, and they're using it basically that it produces thermal energy, and yeah, it's still running on that. Yeah, it's crazy that 70s tech still works. You'd think stuff back from then would be running on steam or something, but they built it hardy with some nice radiation stuff, and from what I understand, its energy supply is definitely much lower because the energy output will fall off exponentially, so it's like less than half of what it started with. But still, yeah, it's still, sending back signals. I don't know near enough what information it's still sending, but I think among the things, it's like electromagnetism measurements. So, like, I think it was our way of knowing where the magnetosphere of the sun finally ended, or like reached what we're now calling the edge of the magnetosphere of the sun with the rest of the galaxy. So it's basically got a compass on there, and it's sending back signals very, very slowly.
Interestingly enough, the isotope that it uses in its radiothermal generator, or radioisotope thermoelectric generator rather, which is an RTG, is plutonium-238, which has a half-life of 87.5 years or so, which means it actually still has more than half of its original power output.
Okay.
But, you can imagine that most of that is used to keep the system running and to occasionally power an antenna, and the antennas are going to take more and more power to get a signal back to us in any reasonable rate. And so, they have to shut down a lot of systems in order to keep the thing operational. Also, you have to keep it warm, I guess, right?
Yeah. And more importantly, because it's 70s technology, it has the exact same problem that Mark Watney had, that the only music on that thing is disco.
Look, that's not a problem. That's a joy to be around.
That is a problem.
It's not a problem. Everybody should listen to more ABBA.
Oh, ABBA. My mom loved ABBA. Anyway, so it's really just, do you think that it could ever, like, pick up anything from, like, some other civilization sending anything that it would ever pick up a signal? Because it doesn't seem to have ever picked up anything out there, which could give the Christians an argument for we're alone. Or do you think?
I don't think it even has the right equipment to do that. I don't even know if it has a large receiver dish.
And even if it did, the thing is, it's still, cosmically speaking, right next to the Earth. Even if it were pointing in the right direction, it would take 70,000+ years to get to the nearest star system. And that is peanuts compared to the rest of the galaxy. And conversely, since it's basically next to us, our radio dishes here on Earth are much larger, much more sensitive, much more likely to pick up an alien signal than what Voyager would. So the only way our spaceships are going to find aliens faster is if we somehow find that there is a way to travel faster than the speed of light, which I'm very dubious about doing. So we probably have to do it the hard way and have to wait for signals that go at the snail's pace of light.
So do you think there's any like any reason we should be sending out any kind of probes, like even now with today's technology? Like, would it be useful?
Yeah, but not to find aliens, just to learn more stuff, right? I mean,
yeah.
There was an idea that Stephen Hawking actually endorsed before he died, which was something called Project Starshot, if I remember correctly. Which was basically the idea is you send out postage stamp sized probes. These are like what they weigh like a gram, and they're like, you know, very, very, very tiny. And you put them out in space. You put out like 1,000 of them, and then you blast them with lasers to shoot them over to the nearest star system as fast as you can. You wait 30 years, they get there, and then you use them as kind of a collective antenna to send a signal back to Earth to send its data back. And I think that's a great idea. I think that we should spend money on that, build a giant laser, shoot the satellites with the giant laser, and go do science rather than bomb children.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Yeah, that's interesting. I wish they'd do something like that. Anyway, that's all I really had, guys. So thanks for answering my question.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here, Maureen.
I hope you get a couple of theists calling.
It'll never happen. They're too afraid.
Yeah, well, we're scary
I know.
dudes.
You guys are scary. Okay, thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye. See these angry faces. We're gonna... I don't bite, I promise. I even couldn't bite because you're too far away, likely. You know, I mean, like...
What we need is some drama here, so let me fight back at you. You said we're not going to send probes to find life. I disagree. They might be in the oceans of Europa, so we just have to drill down and find them. Maybe.
You're telling me you want to drill, baby, drill?
If there's any place we're going to drill, baby, drill, Europa's a good spot.
Is Europa the one with the methane seas? Or is that the one with the ice, with the ice water?
No, that's Titan, which is around Saturn.
Titan. Yeah, we should also drill, baby, drill there. Yeah, Forrest and I got into a spat over this. Did you see that? So Forrest is like, you know, we should just go obliterate Mercury, mine it to hell, and then use it to build solar panels and then beam power back to Earth. And I'm like, look, bro just wants to destroy Mercury. And I think the correct position is that we should send spacecraft to Titan and then just use up all their hydrocarbons. And then we could, you know, just accidentally greenhouse effect our way into a livable atmosphere. No problem. We can't run out of oil if we go steal Titans.
There's a major problem that's going to slow you down on Titan. There's virtually no oxygen. It's going to be really hard to have a chemical reaction at scale.
You know what they said when Neil Armstrong tried to land on the moon? They said he couldn't do it. And then you know what he did? He did it.
On the other hand, he also looked like Ryan Gosling, so he can do a lot.
Does he look like Ryan Gosling?
He does in the movie First Man.
Because Ryan Gosling plays him?
Yes.
Okay. I don't actually know what Neil Armstrong looks like. And you know what? I get Neil Armstrong, Lance Armstrong, and Louis Armstrong all confused all the time, so I could have said something very silly, but I think I got it right this time.
I've seen them in very different movies, and I feel a little bit guilty for this because I did not know it. But when Neil Armstrong retired, he was an Ohio guy pretty much most of his life, and when he died, he was probably not too far away from me when I was doing my grad studies in Columbus. Because boy, oh boy, if I knew that Neil Armstrong was anywhere nearby, I would have been that kind of person to bother him. Hey Neil, hi, how you doing? How is the moon?
I'm sure that it was nice the first few times, and then over the next 50 years, it was. I don't know. It just seems like it's not a. It seems like it's like when. What's the best way to put this? Imagine that like you were a band in the 70s and you wrote one hit song, or maybe the 80s, and then people have been asking you to play that song for. It's like when people shout "Freebird" at a concert. Like, look, they have other songs. But no, it's always
Very
Freebird.
true. Yeah.
Yeah, so apparently Louis is the one that races bikes, Lance is the one that went on the moon, and Neil is the one that did PEDs. No, wait, is the one with the trumpet.
Louis Armstrong is the trumpeter, also called Satchmo, also the accidental inventor of scat. Lance Armstrong is the bicyclist and doper and former husband to, what was it, Shania Twain, or I forget which country music stars he was married to for a while. And then, Neil Armstrong, first man on the moon, engineer by trade, and after landing on the moon, went and just became an engineering professor in a relatively small college in Ohio.
He could have gotten a better job if he wanted to, right?
He was just this private dude. He just wanted time to himself and do that kind of teaching work.
I'm surprised that he needed to. My understanding is that he didn't have a particularly high retirement from the Air Force, particularly large retirement fund. They didn't get paid well.
Don't know the details for that so well. One other fun fact with Neil Armstrong is back in the 70s, he did use his notoriety to do an expedition to do a slam dunk on the biggest ancient aliens advocate at that time, Eric von Daniken, because he claimed, oh, there's this cave down in South America with all this gold left by the ancient alien-loving civilization there, that von Daniken said that he went there and saw for himself. And Armstrong basically said, all right, we're going to go find it. Nope, we can't find it. Oh, that was a big fat lie? Well, egg on your face. Nobody's going to give you a television series in the early 2000s and lets you get a career out of this. Oh, wait, that's exactly what happened.
Oh, was that the guy?
Yeah.
Wait a minute. He's not the crazy hair guy, right?
No, that's his, you could say his understudy. That's Giorgio Tsoukalos, but Eric von Daniken was a Swiss hotelier / criminal, and I say that because he actually was in jail when he was writing one of his books, because he was at least convicted of embezzling funds so he could go on all these vacations for his book project.
Right, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes you just gotta embezzle. It's totally normal.
Yeah. And
who hasn't done a little embezzlement?
Yeah. Well, his embezzling also helped lead to a book that, angrily enough, is the best-selling book in the history of archaeology.
What's it called?
Chariots of the Gods, ?
Oh, I've heard that. I've heard of that. That's very sad that it's a nonsense book, I imagine, right?
Yeah. It starts with some nice science fiction, but then it says, pyramids, other things, all that sort of stuff. It's like, must have been aliens, and it's been rinse and repeat of that, even though even what von Daniken had was also stolen from other people that he had to go to court about, because no, that's our crazy idea. You can't steal that without attribution.
Imagine wanting that kind of attribution for something that is so obviously wrong that middle schoolers could prove you wrong. It's just the level of confidence isn't the right word. The level of arrogance that some people have about their obviously wrong ideas is quite disturbing.
Yeah.
Although I have noticed flat earthers seem to be less brave these days. They tend to stay in their little echo chambers nowadays because, well, I think it's become a lot less popular to be a flat earther since the final experiment, which, is perhaps reasonable and good. I'm actually glad that that's working, even though it means I can talk with less flat earthers.
the fact you're still able to talk with any is still unfortunate.
You know,
you're right.
I haven't
I think
really. It doesn't. They haven't been showing their faces lately. Kind of a shame. I get mostly trolls these days. Look, so we do have some people in the call-in queue. However, they are both atheists, and they both just have physics questions, which I guess, look, I understand that that's reasonable to ask. Like, if you're going to ask a physics question, it's reasonable to do it here, but we have email addresses. Anyway, let's bring on, why don't we bring on John? How's that sound?
Let's do it.
All right.
Hello.
John, how's it going?
Hey, it's going okay. Your conversation reminded me when I was a kid, we had a copy of Chariots of the Gods on the bookshelf, and I remember cracking it open as a, I guess, elementary schooler, and I remember it had a lot of really cartoonish drawings that were kind of funny. And it was supposed to be drawings of like cave paintings or, carvings from ancient civilizations. And this one kind of looks like an astronaut. It looks like he's wearing a spacesuit, that kind of
How
stuff.
does this Egyptian hieroglyph look like a light bulb?
Yeah, right, exactly.
It's actually even worse than that. One of the drawings in the book thinks it's like, oh, this is ancient cave art, but it was actually Soviet propaganda from the 1960s, and he confused the cover art for the article with an ancient drawing. So it's even worse than you think.
Wow. And I think, if I remember correctly, von Daniken was also kind of like a hyper-capitalist too, right? Wasn't he?
He was an anti-communist, conservative guy, yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, the thing I called to ask about was I don't know if you guys are you interested in like cosmology?
Yeah.
On the grand scale. So I've been thinking about like the structure of the largest known scale of the universe, and how it's like these filaments. It's kind of like a crumb of a loaf of bread with like big gaps and holes, like hundreds of light years, wide gaps and holes and voids.
Millions of light years wide gaps. Yep.
Oh yeah.
Millions of light years. Yeah. But I'm wondering, like, how would it have developed that kind of a structure if it's all coming from gravity? If it's gravity tends to pull things together, it seems like there would be something that would create these voids.
Voids have a tendency to grow.
Become repulsive at like if you have a huge absence of matter, does it become repulsive?
Yeah.
Or maybe
almost literally yes. Almost literally yes. So as you can basically think of voids as wanting to grow in the same way that you can think of overdensities as wanting to shrink. If you work out the dynamics, like the actual gravitational dynamics, it's essentially
right there, right?
Well, it doesn't really account for the expansion of the universe unless you believe a particular team out of New Zealand. Because the universe is not all voids. Yeah, what you're looking for is there's a result by, what's his name? I don't know, I'd have to go look up his name. But there's a team, there's a New Zealander or a New Zealand fellow who had a few students, and so they've kind of been like working on this niche idea that dark energy isn't a real thing, and really it's just that we are in an underdense region, so it looks like the universe is trying to expand around us, but really it's just the void trying to expand. It's pretty fringe because it doesn't seem particularly well supported by the data, but it's worth investigating at least.
Well, maybe I'll shoot you an email about that.
Yeah.
If that's okay with you. Yeah, okay. So
you can also come onto my live stream tomorrow. Called Ask a Physicist, where you can ask a physicist.
Okay. Yeah, and now that you've answered that for me, the discussion about Voyager got me thinking about
Captain Janeway.
Actually, Elon Musk's plan for putting data centers in low Earth orbit. I mean, I've heard a lot of talk about like the problem with dispersing the heat.
Yep.
And I'm wondering how much of a problem is that really, and what scale would these? I mean, you're not going to build a data center the size of a warehouse like we have here on Earth. But like this, the whole thing just seems like a pipe dream to me, or just like a fundraising scam.
That's what Elon Musk does. He just sells pipe dreams, right? That's why he sent a car to Mars. Not because he's sending us to Mars anytime soon, but because he wanted to raise money for SpaceX.
Yeah, it's like the did you ever read Extraordinary Popular Delusions and the Madness of Crowds?
Nope, never heard of it.
So when the stock market first came to France, people started forming these companies, and they would just give them names and premises, like goals, like for how they were going to exploit the new world. And they would just get all these people to invest money in it, and these companies had like no assets, no real, management. They were just a whole bunch of scammers who were, yep. And it seems like that's just what he's doing now. He's just like fueling all these bubbles on empty promises, like self-driving cars and Hyperloop tunnels and all this. But
the Hyperloop is a very funny failure.
With cooling, though, is the problem with cooling as bad as people say?
It's very hard to cool things in space. It's exceptionally hard to cool things in space. And so that's why, you want to have efficient electronics in space so that you don't have to cool them as much. But data centers, they don't do anything except output heat, right? The job of a computer is to turn it's to turn energy into information and heat. That's what a computer does.
And they use an enormous amount of energy too, an enormous amount of electricity.
Yep. And so it will be a very serious problem.
So you would need very, very large solar panels. And then but if this thing is in orbit, sometimes it's going to be facing the sun. And when the sun is beating down on it, it's going to heat up, and you got to get rid of that heat too, right?
Yep. Yeah, I mean, like there are enormous problems with heat dissipation. But honestly, I'm well, perhaps not more concerned, but I am fairly concerned about this idea of putting a mirror in space to provide light at night. I think that's a horrible idea. And I think that just got approved by Congress, actually.
That seems like a really bad idea.
Yeah, it's already screwing up enough for the astronomers with all the Starlink satellites, but cranking it up an order of magnitude is not going to be great. But when it comes to these satellites, while there are some interesting engineering ways to try to get around it. So, for example, if you could make chips that can run hotter, the hotter you get it, the more radiation it can then give off because of that. So in theory, you could design a kind of chip that would be better to run hot, which then would be better in space. But to me, the biggest thing is this. If there's a rack of servers here and I want to upgrade it, I basically just have to go pull out one of the blades and then put a new one in. And that's cheap and easy. You just put something into space. If you want to, upgrade it, that's millions of dollars to do something that one guy could do in 5 minutes.
The idea is that you wouldn't upgrade it; you would just deorbit it and put another one up. Because he's talking about putting tens of thousands of these things up because they can't be really big. There have to be a lot of them. So,
to me, the economics makes
data centers
no sense.
under the ocean, right? I think they already have data centers in the ocean, right?
I think that Microsoft had some experimental data centers in the ocean, but there are problems with that, namely that ocean water is like famously corrosive.
Yeah, super corrosive, yeah.
And so it's really hard to do this properly. But generally, look, maybe I'm a Luddite, but I generally think that in the same way that biologists and botanists lost a lot just because of how much deforestation we did. Just as a society over the last 200 years, as like a human society, we are going to lose a lot if we keep polluting our night skies. Like our ability to do astronomy, our ability to do deep space cosmology, or deep space science is going to dramatically shrink. And I think that would be a very sad thing.
And also just cluttering up low Earth orbit with lots and lots of junk. That I mean, it's already really bad up there, and that's hazardous.
Yeah. The Kessler syndrome becomes more and more possible if we're going to increase the satellites by an order of magnitude or two.
Yeah. I mean, I remember when I was a little kid, like I would look up at the sky and you would never see things moving up there, you know? It would be very, like you might see a like a meteor or something, right?
Yep.
But you wouldn't, like now it's like you go anywhere dark and you just see these things go streaming across like there was a time when, I don't know can you even keep track of them anymore? I mean, I remember.
Yeah, of course you can.
Maybe 10 years ago.
I think there's like 14,000 satellites that are orbiting the Earth or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was out in the middle of nowhere with some friends, and we were watching the satellites, and then I was looking them up on my phone. There was a website called Heavens Above that would you enter your latitude and longitude and what time of day, and it would tell you what satellites were flying overhead. And I'm like, I watched one go by, and I'm like, all right, I'm not going to look that one up. So that one could be a UFO. I can tell everybody I saw a UFO.
Sure. But of course it wasn't. Of course, it was probably just some data communication satellite or something like that.
One of them was one of the ones I did look up was actually a discarded stage from a Russian rocket.
Yep, that does happen. I think that actually it's either happened or it's going to happen that one of the Falcons or Super Heavies or whatever is going to crash into the moon.
What? Really?
Yeah. Because, like, you know, it was too high up for them to deorbit it, and it didn't have enough fuel, so it's going to crash into the moon.
Okay.
Let me double check.
That'll be something to look for, I guess. If it was a 50-50 chance. Well, probably less than a 50-50 chance we'll see it, right?
So no, you won't see it at all. In the early hours of August 5th, an abandoned SpaceX rocket stage is expected to slam into the moon at around 8,700 kilometers per hour.
Even with,
but no, you won't see it. I mean, it's small. No. Well, maybe with like a big proper telescope, but no, I don't think that you'll be able. You definitely wouldn't be able to see it with your naked eye. I don't think.
No, I wouldn't. Yeah, I wouldn't think with naked eye.
Yeah, I would imagine that.
Thanks for answering my questions.
Yeah, of course. We actually do have some people in the call-in queue, so we are going to let you go. But thank you for being here, John.
Yep. I'll shoot you an email about those New Zealanders.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right.
Take care.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Sure. All right. So we do have, we're just waiting for the screening to finish because that's like a whole thing that has to be done because apparently I'm a bad host. I don't know what I can say. Apparently they just hate me. They'll never invite me back to do this because apparently I take people before they're done being call screened. Anyway, but we do have some people in the call screening line that we're going to be bringing on shortly. Yeah, I don't know. I feel very doomer about where the world will be in 20 years. And maybe that just means I'm old.
Well, please don't say you're old because I think I've got about 10 years on you and
I'm 33, so maybe.
Yeah, I've got just a little less than a decade on you. So hold on, my back just went out. Okay.
Sciatica, you know?
Sciatica, gout.
What are you, a French king? We're over here with gout.
Nonetheless, I have ups and downs about my optimism and pessimism. And all I can say is, boy, oh boy, do things look dark right now. But man, how dark must have things looked in 1939. And we somehow were able to eventually get to something better. So it's a long road getting from there to here.
Don't do it.
I was waiting for your reaction.
I'm like, wait a minute, what did he just say? You know what? Everybody says that song is okay. For those who don't know, there's more Star Trek happening. So there's a show called Star Trek Enterprise, and I think it started airing in 2001. And usually the original Star Treks, they had like kind of horns or like, you know, it was kind of a symphony orchestra style opener theme song. And it was always very spacey, very sci-fi, very great. And then they decided that Enterprise, they should have like some kind of atrocious pop folk band play a song as like an actual song with lyrics that isn't spacey or Star Trekky at all. And everybody hated it. And then you watched the show, and then it turns out that actually you can't help but sing along, and it's great.
Yeah, unfortunately, you watch enough episodes, and you can't help but have faith at the heart.
Indeed. By the way, somebody asks, did that have Sam Bakula? No, it's Scott Bakula, and yes, it did have Scott Bakula. Scott Bakula was also in something else. He was in Quantum
Leap.
Quantum Leap. I never saw it. I heard it was not great.
Yeah. There's actually one episode of Enterprise where one of the villains in the episode of Enterprise was his sidekick from Quantum Leap. So it was like, ooh, we got the actors back together, but now they're on opposite sides. Ooh, good episode. Was it a good episode? No.
Oh, okay. Well,
yeah.
I mean, I've seen Enterprise 2 or 3 times, but I wouldn't remember anything from it because it's not a great show. It's just what would happen if George W. Bush was in space.
It also doesn't help that, the show comes out basically at or around 9/11, and that really affects a lot of the stories and storytelling.
Yeah, it's a little rough.
Yeah, on the other hand, that kind of storytelling is also what made Battlestar Galactica great, because it was also
true.
Very
You're talking about the new Battlestar Galactica, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, I haven't seen the original one, but yeah, the new Battlestar Galactica was excellent.
Yeah, I have the original on DVD in the other room. So I should also be careful. There's Battlestar Galactica from 1978-79. There was an attempted sequel series called Galactica 1980. It didn't even finish like half its first season when ABC was like, nope, take that off. And I watched it and I'm like, yep, you should have taken it off even faster.
Didn't the remake of Battlestar Galactica have a sequel, kind of?
It had a sequel, it had prequels, it had a lot of things. So like Caprica was the prequel series.
Caprica, that's right.
It was that was like the origins of the Cylons, trying to set that up. There was a bunch of mini-series or like extensions for little plot points. And of course, there's a lot of things that you realize, oh, that's a callback to the original series. So like, for example, one of the kind of villainous people there was played by the same person who played Apollo in the original series back from the 70s.
I see.
Yeah, and also, if you know old television and you watch it, it's like, oh, Admiral Adama, is played by Lauren Green, who is the patriarch on Bonanza, which was like one of the longest running westerns in American television history.
Yeah, I don't really know a lot about old television, but that's because the only old television I really know about is Star Trek. Because apparently, this didn't used to be a huge part of my life, by the way. I was like, I didn't watch any Star Trek up until I was 19. And then I'm like, you know what? I was at Fermilab at the time. I was there doing some undergrad research stuff. Nothing particularly important. But I had a lot of time to kill in the evenings, and I'm like, you know what? I call myself a dork, a nerd, a geek, if you will. But I've never seen Star Trek. This cannot stand. So I turned on The Next Generation and I never looked back. It was a good place to start.
I thank/blame my father. This was in the 90s. The Sci-Fi Channel made purchase to the rights to air the series and try to update the video quality and like add some extra little things. And so we basically were I remember specifically, it was at my father's mother's place that we watched on the couch and watched them re-premiere the first episode that premiered back in 1966, The Man Trap.
Sure.
Then watched all the other episodes. My father told me about his various history. Like for Halloween, he made his own Gorn costume back in the 70s.
Oh, it must have been horrible.
You mean wonderful?
Well, look. How do you feel about the Gorn in Discovery? Is it Discovery that they're in? Yeah. How do you feel about? Or no, I'm sorry, that's Strange New Worlds. How do you feel about the Gorn in Strange New Worlds? Spoiler alert, by the way.
So of what I've seen so far, what they try to do is say, hey, you remember the Xenomorphs? Let's do that.
Yeah, basically. But it's cool. I like Strange New Worlds, and anybody who says otherwise can, well, maybe it's just, who's the actor who plays Pike?
Ashton.
It's a funny name. Yeah, there you go. Really, really talented.
I would also say too handsome. Like, please stop.
Yeah, I know, right? I know. Yeah, it's like honestly, does your hair have to be perfect every time? Like, it's just, you're making us look bad.
Yeah, there's a reason eventually he's going to end up in that chair.
Yeah, I mean,
spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert from the 1960s. Yeah. All right, so we do have a caller. We have Zeph calling in, who is an anti-theist, but has an anti-gravity conspiracy that they want to talk about. So let's bring on Zeph. Zeph, you are on the line. What you got for us?
Hey. How's my audio, first of all?
I mean, it's as good as it'll get.
Okay. Yeah, I remember. Now I'm a little bit older than you guys, and many years ago in the '90s, I remember reading in Popular Science about one physicist named Ning Li, and she claimed to have an anti-gravity, or they usually typified it as a gravity modifying device. And one thing, I never saw any mainstream physicists say that she was a loon. You know, usually whenever you hear stuff like this, you know, it's like, yeah, it gets pushed down pretty quick, kind of cold fusion sort of deal.
Sure, she wasn't a loon, by the way.
Okay. So maybe you know something about this.
Yeah, I do. I actually did a deep dive on her story in particular because it's interesting. So essentially, she was a theorist. She was like a theoretical physicist. And she was working on this beginning in the late 80s. There was some experimental results that were a little bit confusing, and so she came up with a theory to try to explain these results. And her idea was using pretty sound theoretical methods to try to explain some kind of anomalous things that some experiments were detecting. And she's like, look, if my theory is right, then we should be able to, produce these kind of like, we should be able to like cancel out gravity a little bit in a certain way using superconductors and magnetic fields in a particular configuration. And the science was actually decently well founded. Like it was a good idea. It was a creative idea. It was novel. It wasn't standard. It was, fairly fringe, but that's what theorists are good for. Theorists are good for coming up with crazy, wacky ideas that are still reasonable. And part of the thing that made her idea, her science decent and good is that she said, look, if this is true, we should be able to do XYZ thing and see that this and make a prediction and see that this is the outcome of that experiment. And so she wrote a few papers detailing her theory, and then she teamed up with some experimental physicists in the 90s, and they ran the experiment, and her predictions failed. And so she just kind of stopped working on it. Now, about a decade later, she was picked up by the DoD or the DOE or someone like this, because they gave her a grant to look into this more. And then, I think 10 years after that, and she was already pretty old at this point, 10 years after that, she got hit by a car and suffered some very serious brain damage. But look, I mean, she had a good idea. It just turned out the idea was wrong.
Oh, okay. I've never seen, what little bit of information I've been able to get on it was, so, superficial. The thing I was interested in is, and that I totally didn't understand about this, was the Bose-Einstein condensate deal. I've tried to look up, but that math is just way above my grade level.
I don't remember those being involved in her claim. She was working with superconductors, if I remember correctly. I don't think that she was working with Bose-Einstein condensates. But I think that, you know what? Okay. It may have been that she was treating the superconductor as a Bose-Einstein condensate for particular magnetic excitations or something like that. It's been a while. It's been over a year since I looked into this. But
I'm looking quickly at the Wikipedia page, and it mentions the use of Bose-Einstein condensate for at least something equivalent to a superconductor.
Okay, yeah. So there was something involved there. It was actually pretty detailed, and not to toot my own horn, but I did post a video about this on TikTok. If anybody, and it might also be on Instagram. It was a while ago, so I don't know if I posted it there. But I do have I provide the sources and I talk about it and kind of explain what's going on. It's a pretty long video, but I can go see if I can. If you want to email me about it, I could send it to you. I could send you a link. I could just go pull it up somewhere.
Look it up.
But yeah, I mean, if you go, actually. I might even be able to find it if you just type in my name on TikTok and Ningli. Maybe not. But I can find it somehow, and I'll find it. I can send it to you. But yeah, I mean, it was certainly really, really interesting. I just don't think anything came of it. And so, look, there are some conspiracies that the experiment actually worked, but they covered it up, and that's why the DoD or whatever picked her up in 2004. And she was working at a black site for 10 years. Okay, but there's no evidence of that. So why would we believe any of that?
Right. I mean,
and I will note, if the military did have that kind of technology, F-16s and other jet fighters like that would be incorporating it. And I know that because one of my first jobs out of grad school, I was at a college north of me in the Boston area. North of the Boston area, and one of the professors there, he left the private sector because he wanted to go into teaching, and later I found out, he used to do fusion research at Lockheed Martin. And one of the things that Lockheed Martin would say, hey, can we figure out a way to put a fusion engine or fusion generator inside an F-16? Because that would be what we would call in the business freaking awesome. Well, right. That hasn't happened. The thing still runs on fossil fuels. So fundamentally, if the military could be using anti-gravity laser weapons in Iran right now, they would, rather than saying, oops, we're out of missiles.
Also, let's be real. Trump probably would have just like blabbed it on accident.
True.
Well, I mean, that's why, it remained kind of a conspiracy theory kind of, bug in my brain, was, that whole thing where she's working in Huntsville. I forget the name of the lab. And, she was refused to go back. She was refused permission to go back for her mother's funeral. And then not too long after that, she gets hit by a car. For the conspiracy-minded, which I tried definitely not to be, that sounds, kind of weird, kind of spooky there.
I mean, the thing is like, people get hit by cars sometimes. People die sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it just does happen, like, even to scientists who are working on, like, fancy things. And so, I don't know. I'm just not too bothered by it. Like, maybe there was something to it, but I feel like it's been 20 plus years since this, it's been more than 20 years since her original work. If something was coming of this, it's really hard to keep things secret for that long, right?
Right. Yeah. As they say, if you know any project managers, yeah. All right. Well, I mean, that pretty much, especially if I get to look up what the content that you've produced on that. That is just like one of the last things, it was like my little pet leprechaun that just kind of bugged in my brain. And since I didn't understand,
you shouldn't keep leprechauns as your pets, by the way. It's inhumane.
A mental pet. Let's put it that way. Kind of a mental Tamagotchi there. Okay. So and just, I gotta add, at 53, being like mid-Gen X, yeah, we all thought that the world would just be radioactive slag by now. Somehow, I think it'd be almost impossible to kill ourselves even if we tried.
I'm not too worried about us killing ourselves. I think the human species is going to survive. The human species will survive. The thing is I think that it's very possible in 20 years we will be all very miserable.
Yeah, that's the part I'm worried about.
Yeah, I'm less worried about the end of life. I'm more worried about the ultimate enshittification.
Yeah, that's
right. And just one last thing, very bad. Aaron.
Yeah, sure.
There was like a huge program. I forget the name of it. I don't have any parallel device here to look anything up. For like nuclear powered flight, I believe the U.S. and the U.S. Air Force, I think it was, and the Russians were trying to work on that. But I can't remember the name of the program. Apparently,
I think the Russians actually had an aircraft that was. I think somebody had an aircraft that had a nuclear power plant on it, but it just doesn't make any sense.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. My understanding is the U.S. researched it, but ultimately realized, hey, this is really hard to do, and of course, one accident, and you've made a really, really big mess.
Right. Okay. Well, I mean, that's it. Sorry, I can't be more controversial, but
it's okay. We forgive you.
This time.
Go forth, my son.
All right, guys. All right. Take care. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Ning Li is a very interesting case because this is the only case I can think of where somebody seriously actually did science for anti-gravity. And then, of course, they came up with the conclusion that it didn't work. And everybody else who has ever claimed to have done anti-gravity research, I can't find any evidence for any of this. Sorry, I have this killer cough. Maybe it's tuberculosis. Now, we do have another caller, but they're an atheist and they just have science questions, which, you know, we're happy to take. But we do want to remind you, there is still about an hour left in the show. And so if you think that, what was her name? Amy Eskridge was was actually secretly doing anti-gravity research and she was killed by the government or something. Or if you think that in 1953 or whatever, aliens were found at Roswell, New Mexico, call in. If you think that aliens came down and caused a flood to wipe out angels that had mated with humans, call in. Hell, if you think that God is real, call in.
Yeah. If you watched Disclosure Day and you thought it was a documentary, call in.
It was a good movie. I did like it. But that's just because Steven Spielberg is a good director, it turns out.
Yeah.
It was a little silly.
My biggest complaint was these are the same alien design that he already basically made the standard in the 1970s.
Yep. Yeah, I know. I was like, oh, of course they have big heads and like 3 fingers. What is this, E.T.?
I was going to say Close Encounters.
Yeah, it's all the same. This is just what Steven Spielberg thinks aliens look like. It's just his personal vision of what an alien is.
Yeah. I will note, though, that the alien from E.T. is at least a real alien because you can see them in the background in Star Wars. They're in the Galactic Senate.
That makes sense. Yeah. I mean, there are real aliens in Star Wars, famously a documentary. You know, sometimes you just have to record something so silly so that people think it's fiction, even though it's actually real. All right, let's bring up Cedric, who's going to ask a question about something I don't know anything about. So hopefully, Aaron, you will know something about it. Cedric, you are on the line. It sounds like you have a question about superfluidity and superconductivity of Bose-Einstein condensates.
Hello, and actually I kind of don't, because I was going to ask if there's any other properties like that in this similar vein of weirdness to those two that happen when you cool something down really cold.
Like superfluidity or superconductivity, like kind of super stuff?
Yeah. Like, is there anything or any other weird thing that happens when you cool things down to extremely low temperatures?
Well, kind of. Most of the funky phases of matter that you get in condensed matter stuff, like all of these, you know, double bilayers of graphene or whatever that have funny magic number properties, or like these topological qubits, all of this stuff, all of these funky phases of like quantum phases of matter, almost all of these are taking place near absolute zero because you basically need to have essentially no random thermal motion to disturb your quantum states. But that's all I can think of.
Yes. Okay.
There are things like supercritical fluids. Those are kind of interesting, where you basically lose the boundary between liquid and gas. That's kind of a wackiness that happens at really extreme temperatures and pressures.
It's always also fun to watch someone put. Or go ahead.
I was going to say, I also want to note when it comes to superfluidity. So first off, for the sake of the audience, what this is, it's a property that certain liquids can have where it has no viscosity. It basically has no internal friction. And among the things that become stupidly weird is if you have a container with a superfluid, it will climb up the walls and leak out. It's just like, it will not behave itself in any way any fluid you have ever seen will do. So it is very cool in multiple ways.
Thank you for explaining that, because I could never have explained that myself.
There are also some different crystalline forms of ice. In fact, as far as I know, there's more than 20. There's more than 20 ice variants. That most of these take place at very high pressures, but also some of them take place at very low temperatures.
That's interesting.
Or combinations of the two. And they can have different structures, and one of them is even called black ice. Because of just the way that it's configured.
That stuff.
No, I'm not talking about the stuff that shows up on roads. It's just a different phase of ice. It's like ice 19 or something like this. And it has very, very strange properties because I think it essentially treats the hydrogen molecule or the hydrogen atoms as like a gas through an oxygen lattice or something. It has very weird properties. But yeah, there's a lot to be said about the different phases of ice at different temperatures and pressures. In fact, there's a whole Wikipedia article on I think it's called Phases of Ice. Yeah, that's the Wikipedia article name. It's just a whole
Superionic
article.
water is what it says.
Yeah, that might be the kind of thing that I'm thinking of. But if you go to the Wikipedia article, it'll just give you a list of like 20-ish different phases of ice and how you get them and the way that they behave, and there are some neat properties that they have. So, check it out if that's the kind of thing that you're interested in.
Yeah. So
anything else you want to talk about, Cedric?
You guys were talking about interstellar probes in the caller before me. And I was wondering, since you guys are both pretty high-level physicists, what are your thoughts on the likes of warp drives and whatnot?
I want to say that they're probably impossible.
Yeah, I'm extremely pessimistic for a multitude of reasons, not least of which that the physics that even makes it like the math work out requires matter that seems like it just breaks all the other laws of physics.
Yep.
That doesn't help. The fact that if you can go faster than light, you have automatically built a time machine, and then you basically destroy anything that you would dare want to call causality. And as the joke goes, when do we want a time machine? What do we want? Time machines. When do we want it? It's irrelevant.
Yeah, I'm a fan of causality. So
I have not heard that one before.
Yeah. But yeah, the key thing is if you can go faster than light, you can send signals back, and so you can signal yourself back before you sent your signal, so you can do backwards information transfer, and now you've basically you've opened up a can of worms that either is going to lead to massive paradoxes or very many dead Marty McFlys.
Could you go more into detail about the signal sent back in time thing? Because I'm trying to run the logic through my head and it's not going.
Blitz, I think you'll do better than me.
Okay, yeah, I'll give it a shot. Yeah, so the idea is that if you can travel faster than the speed of light, then so there's this idea in relativity that depending on how fast you're going, what you consider now is very frame dependent. It depends on how fast you're going. And so if you can travel faster than light, suppose that you can travel instantaneously between two locations. Well, suppose for a moment that you can travel instantaneously to some other location relative to your now. So you can just teleport to somewhere else relative to your now. Now, that could be somebody else's future, or that could be the future of somebody moving relative to where you left from, or it could be their past. But the point is that if you leave your now, say you're stationary relative to the galaxy to go to Andromeda, and then you appear in Andromeda now, and then you use your faster than light travel, you start moving at regular speeds, and then you sublight speeds. And then you teleport for that reference frames now, you can appear back home in the past. Basically, think of drawing a triangle. You go out instantaneously, and then you go back. And you can end up in your past. That's the kind of thing that you run into. That's the kind of trouble that, in this case, time is running up and space is running across. So you're running... so you go out instantaneously, and then you start moving at a relativistic speed at sublight, so that you're now tilts down the other direction, and then you go back to where you came from, and now you're in your own past. And that's the kind of problem that you run into. Now, of course, it depends on how the warp drive would work or how the teleportation device would work or whatever, but there are just numerous problems of being able to travel at faster than light speeds.
Okay.
And also, being able to do so would require matter that doesn't exist, so...
Yeah, it is worth noting that the paper that's kind of foundational to this back from the 90s, the Alcubierre metric, it's completely legitimate solutions to the Einstein field equations, but in a way that's basically kind of like running it backwards, like say, here's the geometry we need to do this, and now here's the matter distribution you get. And normally you go in the opposite direction because it's like, okay, the matter distribution we need, it's like saying you need an imaginary number of apples. It's almost that kind of a solution that pops out. The math balances, but the reality is just like, no, this isn't happening.
Closer to a negative number of apples.
True. I wanted to be more absurd just to really hammer home. It's like, this should make you stop and say, hey, we're probably not going to do this.
Pump the brakes. Yeah, there was a paper that came out a few years ago where somebody claimed that you actually didn't need negative mass. And then another paper came out like 6 months later saying, oh, actually they were wrong. They were only considering one reference frame, so that didn't go well for them. But it made all the headlines.
I did not hear about the second one, but I had heard about the first one there.
Yep. The second one just pointed out a mistake in the first one.
Well, it's nice to know that that's wrong.
Yep. Well, it's not. I don't know if it's nice, but it is a little bit unfortunate. But sometimes people publish things without being particularly careful.
There's a recent example just of that.
It is nice to know that that is a false hope and will not lead anywhere. Let's put it that way.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
And just when it comes to papers getting refuted, there was a paper relatively recently in Nature that was suggesting that might resolve dark energy, dark matter issues like that, and then somebody realized, you screwed up the coordinate system. So here's a paper that got published in Nature.
I heard about that.
Yeah, and it's like, you had a conversion error basically, and it completely undid the entire resolution of the paper. And somehow that got through Nature, one of the most prestigious journals in the world. So this is normal, that even good papers can be refuted by a careful observation or a careful derivation. So nothing is proven absolutely. From what I understand, even Einstein made mistakes in his original special relativity paper. So we all make mistakes, we all grow, we all learn. There's a reason this is a community aspect rather than just one lone genius.
One thing I will say is that physicists tend to be less careful than mathematicians when checking math steps. Like, having published in both math journals and physics journals, there are things that I've done in physics journals that wouldn't fly in a math journal. Like, kind of just vibes and hand waving, like that will fly in a physics journal, even a fairly good one. But
my modern physics professor would constantly jab at the math during in-class examples. They're just like, yeah, well, that's pi, so we can just call it 5 and move on to the rest of the math.
Yeah, pi is basically 5.
I'm more thinking,
and of course,
the phrase I hate seeing the most in either a textbook or a paper is, it can be shown that, and I look at that and it's like, well, you better show me because I have no fucking clue.
Guilty as charged. Or clearly, or it's obvious that's the worst one.
Oh yeah.
That's horrible.
Yeah.
Any other questions you got for us, Cedric?
No, just the comment that as a math major, it is really nice when they say that and you do actually know what they're talking about, but it is very, very annoying when you look at it can be shown that and you're like, okay, I would like it shown, please.
Yep. Yeah, the only time that people write obviously, or it's obvious, or it's clear that is when they're trying to, I'm guilty of doing this, but when you think it's obvious even though it's not. That's the only time it ever happens.
Basically.
If it was obvious, they wouldn't feel the need to say that it's obvious, right?
Yeah.
Well, Cedric, if you don't have anything else, I am going to drop you and let you go, but thank you for being here.
No problem. Have fun with your upcoming callers, and hopefully someone suitably silly in their...
We know what you want. You want blood sports. We'll give it to you. Take care.
It was quite fun watching Matt, this interesting character, try to drive Matt up the wall, and Matt just sit there calmly through it all.
He's doing his best to keep his zen going.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think that this is a new development.
Pretty well. Anyway, have a nice night, you guys.
Take care. So, I mean, the quality of and this is not true about every math journal, but if you go to a serious math journal, you will, and just as a reference, a colleague and I submitted a paper to a fairly good math journal, not like Annals or something, but a fairly good math journal, and our referee sent back a PDF with 122 points to fix or correct, or to comment on, or establish, or whatever. And the paper is not even that long. It's like 30 something pages. So that's how thorough it can be. I've had rejections from physics journals that are like, oh, well, you forgot about this, even though it's in the paper that I didn't forget about that. Like, they just clearly didn't read past the first paragraph, and then they're like, nope. So that's how it goes.
Yeah. I really don't want to claim I published in math, but I mean, one of the papers that our MIT group did was in the Journal of Mathematics, so technically it's math, but there's still so much math that I don't even want to dare say I know or can derive. There's like jokes that like people in different subfields of geometry can't talk to each other because they've developed such different languages at this point.
Yep.
So I'm really careful, but I'm a member of the cult of Bayes, and that's the mathematical hill I will die on.
What you haven't considered frequentism is the truth and the light about statistics and probability?
Well, maybe I would be more of a frequentist if frequently they could tell me why I should accept their flat priors.
Exactly. I mean, I actually have that issue with I mean, I'm a Bayesian as well, but some people use Bayesianism and then just assume that, and then just have like the most ridiculous priors, and it's like, what are you doing? How are you coming to these conclusions? Now, by the way, I just wanted to bring this up for anybody who isn't aware of it. There is an excellent. I actually have no idea if it's an excellent book. There is a book called States of Matter by David Goodstein, or perhaps David Goodstein. It is a thermodynamics textbook. I don't know what made me think of this. It's from the 70s or the 80s or something like this. And it has a very famous opening line. Now, this is a thermodynamics textbook. It's a serious textbook that was, seriously used in serious classes. Now, the opening line of the book is Ludwig Boltzmann, who spent much of his life studying statistical mechanics, died in 1906 by his own hand. Paul Ehrenfest, carrying on the work, died similarly in 1933. Now it is our turn to study statistical mechanics. And I've always thought that was so fun. Like that is, oh, and by the way, the next line is, perhaps it will be wise to approach the subject cautiously. Like, he knew what he was doing. He knew what he was doing.
The worst thing is, I shouldn't say the worst thing, but one of the things that also adds to the tragedy of Boltzmann's death is he committed suicide in 1907. And part of it was the, depression that nobody was believing him about atoms. It was 2 years earlier that Einstein explains Brownian motion with the existence of atoms and figures out their size. But my understanding is at that point, Boltzmann was no longer reading the physics literature because, it wasn't doing him any good anymore. But,
sure.
He might have had more years if he realized, oh, this Einstein guy is taking me seriously and has vindicated such important work of mine.
Ehrenfest is similarly tragic, arguably more tragic.
Yes.
Do you know the story?
Not really well. All I can say is this, though. If I can do anything for the audience here, if you are struggling, obviously reach out to people, to professionals, but also read the physics literature. Do not stop until you've read all the physics literature before you dare think that you want to do anything. So don't make the mistake Boltzmann did. Just keep reading.
Yeah, make sure to read all of the physics literature. And once you've done that, then if your decision is your decision, then it's your decision. But you can't make that decision until you've read all of the physics literature. So Ehrenfest's case was similarly tragic. Ehrenfest was, I don't think he was Boltzmann's student. He may have been, but he was arguably the last brilliant classical physicist of the kind of pre-relativity days. And he was living in the early 20th century. So his, I think he finished his PhD on statistical mechanics, just as quantum mechanics was starting to come around. And the thing about it is that he was really, really brilliant at coming up with analogies and ways to explain things. This was one of the things that he was most well known for. And actually, Albert Einstein was a friend of his, and Albert Einstein credited him with being the most capable communicator of their day. So think of the Carl Sagan of the early 20th century would have been Paul Ehrenfest. So he was really brilliant in this regard. The thing is he valued himself as a research physicist, not as just a physicist who can explain things and give good lectures, but he valued himself as a research physicist. And he claimed to have not been able to understand what was going on with the quantum mechanics of the early 20th century. This was really disturbing to him because, all of his training was in essentially classical statistical mechanics. And so the fact that he wasn't able to keep up was very disturbing to him, and he ended up killing himself in 1933. And I believe he also killed his son, which is rough. His son was severely mentally disabled, if I remember correctly, and his reasoning, although not justified, of course, but his reasoning is that if he's going to kill himself, no one will be able to take care of his son, and so that he was doing an act of mercy, if you will, or something like that. But it was very tragic. Obviously, some severe mental illness happening, but Ehrenfest also would have been he would have been had his issues resolved had he just continued reading the physics literature. If only he had continued reading the physics literature, then it would just be the case that he wouldn't have had time to do what he did. So, as Aaron was saying, very much make sure if you are struggling with mental health, talk to somebody. Like, there are therapists, plenty of free therapists, plenty of free psychologists, counselors, etc. if you need them. And also read the physics literature because, it'll keep you busy.
That's our public service announcement for the night.
Yeah, there you go. Read physics literature instead of killing yourself. I shouldn't make light of it, but it is a solution, I suppose. Now, look, we currently have an open queue. We have probably another 45, 50-ish minutes that, Aaron and I have blocked out for this evening. At some point, I will be eating dinner, so I can't stick around forever, but we have an open queue. There's currently nobody in the call. I'm getting linked something. Oh, am I in trouble? I might be in trouble.
No, just read the schedule.
Oh, is there a schedule? Oh, yeah, I should read the schedule. Oh, that's a thing. Okay, yeah, we have a schedule. There's a schedule I'm supposed to read. Apparently, we have lots of things going on. Today, Monday?
Yes, all day.
Wait a minute. 12 p.m. is before. That doesn't make any sense.
Did it default to Pacific time? That's fascinating. It should be in Central time.
Wait a minute. The Line podcast is at 2 p.m. in some time zone.
That's probably West Coast
I feel
time.
like that already happened. Did that already happen?
Yeah, they're slightly out of order because the Line as a channel takes priority, so it's always at the top.
Okay. One moment. Okay, so yeah, there are a few things going on this week, although it looks like that we don't have anything planned on... Is it true that there's nothing on Friday?
We haven't done the schedule for August yet.
Oh, Friday's not August, though.
Normally, though, Friday would be a Cus I Wanna.
And I guess we have
usually the slot we have for the Cus I Wanna. So if someone on the host is like, say, hey, I want to shout at people.
That's true.
Give me a time slot. And for the most part, I haven't done that because I don't wanna.
Well, then how can you Cus I Wanna if you don't wanna? That seems impossible.
Yeah, it's one of those conundrums that requires either an outside force or prodigious alcohol to make work.
Yeah, I can imagine that that's probably something that you wouldn't want. Anyway, so I should read the schedule. So we have chewed. Okay. What time zone should I read it in?
Central.
What Central time? Is that an hour? What time is it in the center of the country?
Right now, so
you can just change
please.
it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead and read it for here. So yeah, so tomorrow, July 28th at 6 p.m. Central Time, we got Chewed Gum, and we got Alyssa and Taylor that are going to be hosting that. We also have Call In Now 8:30 with Ari and Jimmy. On Wednesday, we got the Hang Up with Matt Dillahunty. That's at 6 p.m. Central Time. Thursday, July 30th, we got TACIS with Josie and Jack. We got Call In Now as well at 5 p.m. with Luxander. I hear good things about Luxander. And we also got the Line podcast on Thursday as well at 8 p.m. with Alyssa and Jimmy again. The rest of the schedule is to be determined, but there's going to be good stuff. So Sunday, that's when we have our Sunday shows, plural. And Monday again will be another SkepTalk. Who will be on? It might be me. It might be Erica.
I may have even put that as part of my availability, so it might be me. I think.
Yeah. And it might be Bigfoot. And we finally see who really comes to SkepTalk. And boy, oh boy, will there be egg on our faces when that happens.
Wouldn't that be awkward? Imagine just like an extra hairy version of one of the callers just calling in. Or not one of the callers, sorry, one of the hosts.
Nonetheless, I would be happy to co-host with them.
Wouldn't that be something?
It definitely would be
English.
Well, we probably need some sort of translator, so we'd have to have Bigfoot and John Lithgow. Harry and the Hendersons?
Yeah, okay, sure. Sorry, I was responding to a thing. So we do have a theist on the line. Isn't that exciting? So why don't we bring on William from Texas? Last minute.
Well, I don't know if it's exciting, guys. It's kind of a scary thought, me talking about physics.
That's okay.
But
it's
anyway,
totally fine. So, William, you are on the line. What you got for us?
You guys are familiar with quantum chromodynamics, where you have the red, green, blue charges.
Yeah.
In the gluons that carry those charges. Does that in any way show a fingerprint of God?
I don't see how it would.
Well, just why is it 3 charges instead of 2 or 1? Do you see where I'm going at? It just seems
Blitz, you're muted.
So quantum chromodynamics isn't unique. There's also the weak nuclear force famously has 2 charges, right? This is what the weak nuclear force is. It has an SU2 gauge symmetry, which means it has 2 charges. And even more similarly, the electromagnetic force has 1 charge. So we have 1, 2, and 3. I don't see how any of these are going to point to God.
Well, there's Christian physicists who work at CERN and have PhD credentials, and they feel that, let me give you another example, the strong nuclear force, which binds the protons and neutrons, which you guys know should repel each other, but they're held together by this force that's 100 times stronger than the electrodynamic force, and then much stronger than, obviously, the gravitational. How does that just happen? They feel that just happening randomly would just be too big a hurdle. That God created this, I guess. Well, the atoms were created 380,000 years after the Big Bang, correct?
Yeah, you could say that. The atoms were no longer ionized.
All right. So then comes this force, and if it's too strong, you don't get the hydrogen, and if it's too weak, you get the periodic table, or you don't get the periodic table. So it has to be there's ranges this force has to fall within, and they feel that indicates a divine thinker in the deal. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, you're alluding to something called the fine-tuning problem. The question is, it's not clear that there is fine-tuning that happened. We don't know why the strength of these forces are the strength that they have. And to say that, they could have been some other values, but they weren't, is evidence of the designer. It just seems like that kind of falls flat if we don't know what other values it could have been.
Well, that makes sense. So you're saying it could, in another universe or whatever, it could have been different values, and we just happened to hit the...
Or maybe it couldn't have been different values, and it had to be this way.
Yeah, there's a lot of physics still to be determined, and for all we know, we might be able to realize, the speed of light is actually a result of geometry in the same way pi is. We don't know that, but it's something we can't discount.
Okay.
Or the strong nuclear force constant is... Well, to be clear, the strong nuclear force constant is actually basically exactly what we expect it to be. It's not that surprising, because the constant is essentially 1, which is the most natural constant that you can have. Now, the electromagnetic force has a constant that's roughly 1 over 137, and that's kind of small, so maybe that requires some explanation. But the strong nuclear force is exactly as strong as we expect it to be.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the fine structure constant, because the great Richard Feynman said every physicist should put this on a board and worry. And that's Richard Feynman. So are you guys worried about that? I mean, because it just appears everywhere and there's no explanation.
Well, it doesn't appear everywhere. The fine structure constant appears exactly when electromagnetism is involved. And that's, in a lot of places, because a lot of things are described electromagnetically. Like this is what atoms are built off of. Atoms are built using the electromagnetic force and various hadrons and leptons. And so, of course, anything that has atoms involved is going to have this constant showing up all over the place, but that's not surprising.
It's also not even the most constant of constants, because you actually get a different value at higher energies where you actually get an interesting screening effect. And I think at higher energies, it becomes more like 1 over 120 or something like that. It's really, strangely enough, it's a constant that kind of sort of depends on energy.
Yep, that's true.
Well, it's funny, Wolfgang Pauli, who wrote a book on this, when he died, he was in room 137. It's funny, some of these stories. And Richard Feynman, his wife divorced him because he drove her crazy with, always thinking about calculus, and he said nobody should have to endure this. So
I'm not sure if that's the only reason why his wife divorced him, by the way.
I don't know.
Given his biographies, he wasn't exactly coming off as a not someone who seemed to be the best in terms of being a feminist, and in some ways says things that makes it sound like he was an early pickup artist, which doesn't bode well for him being the best.
Exactly.
husband.
Yeah, I wouldn't really buy it. Apparently Schrodinger was famous for sleeping with his students. Or perhaps not sleeping with them, but being very inappropriate with them. So,
but essentially, some of these atheists, and you have Fred Hoyle, who discovered found the resonance of carbon, where you get two heliums make beryllium, and it just lasts a split second, and then it has to find another helium nucleus. And he felt the nucleosynthesis of carbon in stars was just so remarkable that he said a super intellect seems to have monkeyed with physics, chemistry, biology, and there's no blind forces worth talking about. What do you think of his observation, being an atheist?
Well, it doesn't seem to be a particular Yeah, go ahead.
It's also worth noting Fred Hoyle himself was an atheist, and it was his atheism that even made him cringe at the Big Bang Theory. So if the atheist is pointing out this, he definitely didn't see this as an argument convincing him in the existence of supernatural forces. But more fundamentally, these are all multiple examples of coincidences or fine-tuning, and really we have to stop back and say, okay, is this actually what you expect from a supernatural force? Because there's really two hypotheses. What do you expect to see if naturalism is true? What do you expect to see if supernaturalism is true? On naturalism, everything has to be consistent with the laws of nature allowing for life. On supernaturalism, we could exist in any possible universe. It could be the case that the constants of nature don't allow for fusion in the sun, and yet the sun shines anyways because God is all-powerful, can do whatever he wants. The fact that we see that the laws of nature are consistent with life emerging, and us, of course, being here to observe it, is 100% expected on naturalism, because on naturalism, it's the only kind of universe you can possibly observe. Well, on supernaturalism, that's not necessarily the case. So strangely enough, when you actually do the statistical reasoning, all of the stuff you're mentioning about fine-tuning and these coincidences is, strangely enough, an argument for naturalism, not supernaturalism.
Okay. But it seems convincing to some of these physicists, like...
well, they haven't talked to me yet.
I'm sorry. Well, exactly.
Some of them are dead.
And I like to hear different points of view.
Oh, yeah.
Like origin of life. It just seems there's so many hurdles, and it's just so many things that have to be overcome, like getting a lipid layer and to get.
Well, that's actually the easiest thing. The bilipid layer forms automatically. Just throw some oil on water. It already forms those sorts of layers automatically because the lipids have a hydrophilic and a hydrophobic end. So they automatically line up just because they're in water. So that is like thermodynamically expected. It's almost impossible that structures like that won't form. So you highlighted the easiest step as if it's a challenge.
Oh, well, way to go, Bill. Okay. But well, you're familiar with James Gore, that he says that one of the problems is you get too many reactions that gum up the process. That to just get ribose is a major challenge, and you have investigator interference where they go and stop these reactions from getting too far and too clogged up. And the investigator can just say, oh, give me some ribose and order this. But you didn't have that luxury on early Earth, that it was just, so many chances that this thing, the reaction to form RNA could just go wrong. Does that make sense?
Well, unfortunately, you mentioned James Tour. He is not a chemist in the research of origin of life, and he was famously shown to be completely out of his depth by a YouTube educator, Professor Dave of Professor Dave Explains, where he basically says, hey, here's all the papers that show everything you've asked for is already in the literature, and Tor just does his best to ignore it or shout. And it wasn't a good look. There's nothing that Tor has done to actually show scientifically in the scientific literature that he's right. In fact, he has even tried making excuses why he won't do that. So, of the figures you might want to use when it comes to this sort of thing, you are taking someone whose work in what I understand is like nano or carbon nanotools and things like that. That's stuff that sounds interesting. That's definitely well beyond my ability to criticize. But his knowledge doesn't actually percolate into the things he's attacking. And there are much more knowledgeable people that know much more about the origin of life stuff that can tell you better where the state of the field is, what its limitations are, where it might go in the future. And it's not insurmountable, but there is a lot more science to be done. That's my basic understanding of where abiogenesis research is.
But have you considered Mr. Farina?
I'll watch both of them, and I'll like the chirality problem. The amino acids have to be left-handed, and if you have a racemic mixture, then it just screws the whole thing up. And what Professor Dave says, you can get chirality, you can get multicellular. So these things can overcome, and he has the papers to show it. But you're getting two different points of view, and not being an expert, obviously, in biology or origin of life, you just have to judge which seems more probable. And
or you could do a perhaps responsible thing. Okay, so there's kind of two things that you could do. You could just withhold judgment because, perhaps you just aren't comfortable coming to a conclusion on your own based off of what you've heard. Or what you could do is arguably more responsible, is go figure out what is the scientific consensus on the matter. What do most of the chemists and biologists and origins of life researchers think is true? Because they're most likely to be right. Now, they're not guaranteed to be right, but they're most likely to be right. And what you'd find is that most origins of life researchers are going to hold the position that, yeah, this is something that can happen.
But would you guys lean toward the thermal vents, forming the first?
I don't know a lot about origins of life, so I'm not going to hold a specific position about it.
Yeah, I have no opinion. I have no idea what's more probable. This also requires me knowing much more about the early state of the Earth, and I do not know the chemistry there. I could barely spell DNA, so I do not want to say too much about what are the most plausible chemical pathways.
Well, it seems to be the wet-dry cycles, the early, the little ponds and stuff that form. But in my case, since I was an atheist, when I'd go to, these conventions, I'd be the only atheist at the Baptist convention in New Mexico, or when I went to Florida and debated Christians. So I was the atheist. I had to take the atheist side. So, now I have to take a side either way. And I just felt that because of this fine-tuning and, the formidable hurdles that early life has to overcome, that it just seemed, I'm not like, a crazy hardcore atheist. I mean, I just felt that it had persuaded me that there would be a God behind this, and you mentioned the DNA. I mean, to get these four nucleotides, it's like the order that determines these proteins. Now, you hear people like the Discovery Institute say, well, to get 150 amino acid sequence, the chances are 10 to the 77 that this would happen by chance. And when I hear those numbers, I'm automatically suspicious. But
you should be suspicious of that, because I don't think that anybody's actually done the thermodynamic calculations to make that kind of claim.
Yeah, I will also note that sort of calculation is saying, like, it's talking about, like, say, a particular arrangement of the DNA ordering. But here's the thing: you could say that also with any scrambling of a deck of cards. Any deck of cards that you shuffle and then you bring out, it's 52 factorial, which is a gigantic number. Would you say that that's impossible, or would you say, well, that's just this particular arrangement? That any one particular arrangement of DNA is low probable. To say then that any arrangement of DNA of that length is improbable is a category mistake. It's the same sort of mistake that you would make saying, well, my chances of winning the lottery is 1 in 100 million. Therefore, the chances that anyone wins the lottery is 1 in 100 billion.
Yeah, that's a good point. The other thing that kind of struck me was the start and stop codons, that you have like the AUG, you have uracil in the RNA messenger that replaces the thymine. And then you have the UGA that stops the formation of a protein. So how in the world do you get these start codons and stop codons by random chance?
Well, that's a great question. I suspect it's probably not random chance. I suspect that if you asked a evolutionary biologist or an organic chemist, they would probably have a good explanation for you. Are you an organic chemist or a evolutionary biologist or origins of life researcher or a biochemist of some kind, William?
No. Well, here's the problem. No, of course not.
So then why not just go ask them? Because they will give you answers.
Well, I don't think they're taking my phone calls. But
okay, well, that's fair. I mean, you can still like these people write books and they write scientific papers, and you could go read those without having to just like look. I get that you have a position here. I get your position is something like, Christianity of some kind is true, or some sort of creationism is true. But why are you getting your information?
I'm a theist.
Okay, so a theist, fine. Why take the position that that AIG or that the Discovery Institute, that these are actually accurately representing the scientific literature, when you could just go look at the scientific literature yourself?
Funny enough, I just pulled up. There's an article here from 2018 in Scientific Reports, which is a subset of the Nature Journal sections, and it's Purifying and Positive Selection in the Evolution of Stop Codons. So just a very quick Google search is bringing up this paper, which is also open access. So the dollars it costs to buy this is $0. And I am not able to tell you so much about the ultimate quality of this paper, but published scientific literature on literally the evolution of stop codons.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, I would love to read that.
Why haven't you read it? So, it came out 8 years ago.
Well, obviously, I actually focused more on the early Christianity deal. And I
thought you said you're not a Christian.
A little debate. No, but it's... I guess I just don't have a life because I've been way too much time on early Christian. So what's been interesting is studying the periods of life, the Ordovician, the Discovery Institute says the Cambrian, where you have the echinoderms, the chordates like us, the trilobites, these exoskeletons that just seem to suddenly appear, that is evidence of God. That's Stephen Meyer in his book, The Return of the God Hypothesis, says the Cambrian, the Big Bang, and DNA, that's what points to God.
Do evolutionary biologists agree with this?
Of course not. No.
Okay, so then why should we believe the Discovery Institute?
Well, I don't believe anything creation. Are you kidding? But
well, then why are you citing them so frequently?
Because, I was just using that as an example that, give me an example. Okay, during the Ordovician, or I'm sorry, the Devonian, you have the oh God, what's the name of them? But you have these fish with placoderms, I think is what they call them, that develop a jaw and teeth and bony skeletons. So it just seems so improbable that mutation is one of the mechanisms that drive evolution. So what some of these people are saying, and I kind of see some credibility there, is mutation sufficient enough to drive these new body plans, these new phyla that, like in the Cambrian, that don't have these Ediacaran precursors, except maybe a couple phyla came about there in the
thing
Ediacaran.
is, that starts from what I understand, a very false premise that a lot of what Myers tries to argue is that these body plans popped out of nowhere. And that would have been maybe the sort of opinion you would have had when you were looking at the Burgess Shale a century ago. But a lot more science has happened then. And so there are, from what I understand, a lot of evidence of various precursors. It's just that a lot of those body forms were softer and they were harder to find because they didn't leave as good or as many fossils. But biologists and paleontologists kept on digging and have found more and more to show that more of those structures did exist earlier than in the Devonian period. So my understanding is that Meyer writes a science book and is not up to date on the science that he is trying to claim shows where it's trying to point. And to be fair, Myers is not trained as a scientist, and he's not published a single thing in a peer-reviewed venue. I checked. None of his books are for peer-reviewed universities, presses, or things like that. No papers in peer-reviewed journals. Somehow, some way, he works for an institute that gets millions of dollars and has literally not done any science. It's kind of incredible.
Oh, I agree. I mean, what do these guys do all day since they're not doing any research? Do they just...
They're going on Joe Rogan. They're promoting their... I'm not going to be kind. They're promoting their propaganda. That's their main job.
Mm-hmm. But do you give them credit, or at least realizing that we do have an old year? They view the consensus 4.5 billion or 13.7 for the universe, that they do agree with radiometric dating and so forth, whereas something like AIG is not going to give an inch and they're stuck in a 6,000 year universe. Do you give these guys any credit for at least...
Should I give credit to AIG that they're not flat earthers?
I do love that they're not flat earthers, by the way. I've used AIG's website to argue against flat earthers, and that's so funny.
Well, even AIG, I mean, do you give them credit for saying, hey, look, the, what was that dome over the earth? There's a...
Yeah, that's that's a flat earth thing. They're not... No, you don't give AIG credit for not being flat earthers. Because they're still pushing propaganda.
Yeah. And ultimately, the reason they're doing that is because they think they'll look even more ridiculous, and because, frankly, if you are a literalist, you are going to read the Bible and say, yeah, there's a dome over us and the earth is flat, because that's what a literalist would take. But they know that sounds just too stupid to be effective in their ministerial work. So they think it's like, no, this is too stupid to promote, this is too stupid to believe, therefore the Bible can't be saying that. And that's what's pushing them. So I don't give them credit. I say that they are kicking and screaming to get at least some facts right. And I say the same thing for the Discovery Institute. They are kicking and screaming at everything they can. And if you were to let them off their leash, yeah, they probably would be denying the age of the Earth, because they're ultimately trying to undo materialist science. That's their stated goal.
Who knows what their goal is? I mean,
no, we know what their goal is. It was in the Wedge document that leaked back in the late 90s, early 2000s, where they basically showed, yep, this is our propaganda mission. This is what we're going to do to basically take over the entire culture and promote us back into theocracy, because that is their stated goal of what they want to be doing. And one of the reasons I'm here on the line is to do my small part to push back against that.
Yeah, and you guys are doing a great job. But what I'm saying is, they're not going to be skeptical and open-minded like you. These are some of the most closed-minded people that have this biblio-idolatry where they just believe every word of the Old and New Testament is, literal and no mistakes. And it's just obviously the Genesis account gets things totally wrong, the order wrong, and so forth. And people like Ross, I don't know if you're familiar with Buzz over there at Reasons to Believe, but he reads he's the biologist part. They have all these places have their experts, and he reads nature, and he was talking about the article where the with the ocean animals invaded land like Tiktaalik 375 million years ago that makes its way on land and somehow evolves, and you have crabs and insects, and so they agree with a lot of the science. And so these people just can't live without, like you guys, without believing in God. They need God because their lives are screwed up for any number of reasons. Who knows? Maybe it's genetics.
So why do you believe in God?
I actually, to be honest, we had a book club, and I was the atheist part of the Atheist Christian Book Club. So we read The Fortunate Universe by Luke Barnes. And have you ever read that, by the way?
I know of Barnes, and I've read some of his stuff, though I haven't read that particular book.
But he just didn't seem to have a big agenda like AIG or whatever. I mean, he obviously has an agenda, but he just seemed very rational, very clear. I read his book several times because you guys can just blow through it, but it was very dense. It's very dense, and it's very difficult for the layman. So I read that, and I just felt, he talks about the mass of the electron has to be a certain mass. Just so many things, have to go right to get a universe. And he says that if you could just get a universe where you have hydrogen protons bumping into each other,
and if a God existed, that could still be a universe with life in it.
Yeah.
That's the problem. The fine-tuning argument falls flat when you recognize that a supernatural being doesn't need the laws of physics in order to produce life.
We literally have to fine-tune God to make a universe that looks fine-tuned. We have to make God specifically say, I want to make a universe that looks exactly the same as what you expect on naturalism. That is fine-tuning the fine-tuner.
Look, William, I'm hearing that we've had this conversation plenty of times, so we should probably wrap it up, especially because the show is nearing an end. We still have some administrative stuff to handle. Any last words before we send you off to the chair?
Wrap it up.
Yeah, sure.
The frustration I have, and I guess you guys do, because genetics, paleontology, biology, chemistry, physics, astronomy, all the New Testament, Hebrew, Greek, all these things impact the question, does God exist? None of us can be experts in all of these, so we just got to do our best. And, thank you guys for listening and helping me out. I appreciate it.
Thank you for being here, William.
You bet.
Excellent. Well, he was cordial. I don't even know what he believes. I feel like he was citing AIG and the Creation Institute a lot, which makes me think that he is a creationist at heart, but who knows? Look, we have some super chats to read. Should we read them? Because I want to go eat some dinner.
Those sound like two very good things. And I guess the order matters. We can't quite do super chats and eat at the same time.
True. Although, I could really go for some mac and cheese, and the downside is that I can't eat mac and cheese anymore, at least not good mac and cheese. I recently discovered I have celiac disease. So, turns out mac and cheese is it's not quite off limits. There are a few mac and cheese brands, but they're not as good. But I am going to have some leftover food. Anyway, we have some super chats to read. We were gonna click it. It's fine. Okay, I'll start, and then we can alternate. Yeah.
Yep.
So from Mike Jones with the $10, there's somebody in here named Satan's Prick, and I wanted to point that out. This donation is brought to you by Satan's Prick. You know what? Mike Jones? You didn't need to make me read that. How dare you?
We do appreciate the $10, though.
Of course.
All right, so let me click send. Oh, you got it. Okay, so we got Shibby 2K5, so 2005. All right, why is gravity? Why does a big bunch of stuff attract other stuff? Watched a video on it, and they showed fabric with a weight in the middle, but it didn't click. Time is involved too. What's going on here? Yeah, this is not exactly a 30-second chat message.
It's really not.
The fundamental thing is that this is a result of if the graviton exists, it would be an SU0.
It's S13. SO13.
SO13. Okay.
Although the diffeomorphism group is not even a gauge, so it wouldn't even be like a. It wouldn't even be like a, or it's not even a compact Lie algebra. So it's not. This is all to say it wouldn't. You couldn't fully describe GR using a QFT in the way that we typically do. But that's neither here nor there. This is all to say this is a very complicated answer. I don't think Ys exist. I don't think Ys exist in physics. You can ask how, and then we can give you formulas, but I don't think Ys exist.
Yeah. And the best way to put it when it comes to how time is involved with any of this is that fundamentally it's about metrics or measurements and what's the fastest path, or what's the shortest path between 2 points. It's a line, but that's with a flat surface. Once you have the surface that's not flat, that's when you get the nice curvy stuff, and this is where then time gets to play in there. But I am hand-waving over like 10 years of math work that Einstein did. So please super chat more and we'll go into the gory details.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
All right, let me send up the next for you.
From Mike Jones with the $6.66. Hail Satan. Give this to the damn mechanic to keep him around. Is this a reference to something?
They were joking in the chat about like getting paid to be here. I don't know.
Gotcha. Okay, makes sense. Makes sense. And I will send this next one to you. Go ahead.
All right, Blitz. As a Sean Carroll stan, what is your opinion of his argument that science needs to retreat from empiricism as a base standard in order to allow for new progress?
I don't know. Empiricism is good, but I can understand that we can't only rely on, at least if we want to do like things like string theory or things like quantum gravity, we do not have empirical access to those right now, so we have to be a little bit more creative. But I mean, at the end of the day, physics is a physical science, so you better be running experiments.
And I will say that even though a lot of string theory is outside of the domain of what we can test, it should also say maybe we need to come up with some other theories to challenge it that we might be able to test, if only to then show why they're wrong, and then say, all right, we'll come back to string theory. We're sorry, Daddy, we're back. All right, let me send this one, which is actually blank, but it is $2.
No, it's only supposed to be $5 and up. You screwed it up. How dare you? No, it's fine.
Well, those $2 were worth sharing.
Very much so. From Jessica with the 10 pounds, can you explain Schrodinger's cat? Isn't it an objective fact that the cat is dead or not, regardless of if it's being observed? And double slit, looking doesn't affect the photons that bounced off towards you. Okay, so first and foremost, nobody ever put a cat in a box. At least Schrodinger didn't, and nor did any of his students. It was a thought experiment. The idea was originally put forward to try to discredit this idea of superposition that Schrodinger kind of thought was absurd. This was based on the interpretation that was around at the time, that somehow observing it or measuring it is the thing that would cause it to stop being in a superposition. And in fact, you're right, it is absurd. The cat will be either dead or alive. It will not be in a superposition. At least it will not be in a superposition that is incompatible with us not being in a superposition. That's a separate conversation. But this is to say, this is a good example of why we know that we have to think about things a little bit harder. The way to resolve this, of course, is by something called decoherence. This was an idea that was put forward, I think, in the 80s to kind of resolve these kinds of problems. Essentially, decoherence is this idea that as a result of basically anything interacting with anything on a quantum scale, you can break superposition very, very easily. So just by existing at a non-zero temperature, you're giving off light waves, you're giving off of infrared radiation. And in doing so, you become, in some sense, entangled with the photons that you're emitting. And once those photons escape and they do something, now you are entangled with the entire environment. And because you can't keep track of all of that information, the system starts to look exactly as if the wave function had collapsed already, through nobody observing anything, just by existing and emitting, for example, infrared radiation. So yes, the Schrodinger's cat thing absolutely does not like the cat isn't actually dead or alive. It was just a thought experiment to illustrate how silly the idea is. Superposition is real. It just doesn't happen to macroscopic things. And Aaron, if you want to talk about the double slit, I've done it too much lately.
Yeah, I just will also note with Schrodinger that he basically comes up with this metaphor, or I should say metaphor, but thought experiment with the cat, and that's basically what he's saying, all right, quantum mechanics has gotten too weird. I'm out. I'm going into biology. And he basically predicts the nature of DNA. So the dude was smart no matter what he did. His corpse is a better physicist than me. And as for the double slit, it's worth noting that when we talk about things being observed, observation is not actually a passive process. For you to observe something, it actually requires interaction. So it's not that you look at which slit the electron goes through, the photon goes through, and it's just noticing that it's being looked at. It's no, when you do that, you've actually sent, like, for example, a photon, an electron, it bounces off, and that's how you're able to detect it. But that means you're interacting, and by interacting, you get a different kind of effect. So we basically have to realize that looking is actually more causal than you thought, not because of consciousness, but just because of fundamental physics.
Sweet. All right. From Truth or no, that's your turn.
So Truth Over Faith 67, $5 says, we could be mining Mercury. Hashtag liberate Venus. Problem is you're not going to be able to do that with Venus because I have it on good authority that it's actually taken over by the protomolecule and has launched itself out into the outer solar system to create a gate so that way we can go to other parts of the galaxy. And yes, I have read too much science fiction, but if you're familiar with the Expanse book series, that's what happens.
Yeah, also, don't mind Mercury, mind Titan. Screw you, Forrest. I know you're watching. Truth Over Faith is definitely Forrest in disguise.
Now, there's one particular reason you don't want to screw up Titan like that. Titan is the only place we could go to where you could flap your arms and fly.
Mining Titan isn't going to change that.
Have you seen what capitalism done to this planet? What do you think it's going to do to a moon?
Make it better. We'll heat it up with all of our fiery. Well, okay, there's no oxygen. Yeah, there you go. From John Stephen Albert with the $10. My favorite sci-fi folk song is Benson, Arizona, the theme to John Carpenter's Dark Star. Do you know this, Aaron? Have you heard of this?
Not familiar at all with this, unfortunately.
Me neither, which is a shame because they sent $10 to tell us about this. I don't know it, but I appreciate the $10, John.
Right.
John has 3 first names, by the way.
All right. Now we got at D20. Have you rolled for initiative? Okay. I'm so glad Sleepy Talk exists. Or Skippy Talk exists. Apologies. I can't read. I'm too sleepy. I'm so glad Skippy Talk exists. It's such a nice play to learn millions new things. Okay, maybe I was right when it is Sleepy Talk because I feel like I'm.
You'll get another shot. Nice, that one wasn't a super chat anyway.
It popped up here when I filtered on $5 super chats.
Oh,
it's a member chat. That's why.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay. Okay. Well, then I'll read the next one. From Joshua Everett. I know that name. Thank you so much for the $10, Josh. Joshua Everett. I guess I'm hashtag Team Physics tonight. What is the weirdest, most out there, most sci-fi sounding thing that each of you knows to be true about the universe? Go ahead.
Oh boy. The most fundamental law of physics is based on counting. Second law of thermodynamics.
So fake, so made up. Not even a law of physics, just the law of large numbers. No. My favorite, most unintuitive thing is that if you spin a black hole fast enough, not so fast that it loses its event horizon, but really, really fast so it nearly does, and then you take another thing that's spinning really, really fast and you drop it on the black hole's axis of rotation, the gravity can actually be repulsive. That's very weird to me. Gravity's supposed to be attractive, and yet spinning can make it not. And in fact, this is exactly analogous to the way that 2 magnets can repel each other. The more you know.
All right, let's fire another super duper chat to you.
Wait, didn't I just
read the last one? No, you're right. I apologize. All right, yes. This is what happens when, again, I should have drunken 2 coffees before I started this. My apologies.
Mistake.
So, Tom Patterson, 1548. 1548. You've really waited a long time to message us, so thank you for the $5. You can get gluten-free pasta and make gluten-free mac and cheese.
I think this was addressing the celiac. I'm aware. Okay. If you don't know, I have to shill for something for a minute. There is a brand of mac and cheese called Beecher's. The line is not sponsored by Beecher's. This is my own personal opinion, blah, 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 blah. Look, if you go to a Safeway, I don't know what part of the world everybody lives in, but if you go to a Safeway and in their frozen food section, there is a brand of mac and cheese called Beecher's, and they call it world's best mac and cheese. And it's like $14 for a box of mac and cheese, which is exceptionally expensive. But it also is really yummy. And that's what I wish I could have. They do have a gluten-free version, but it's not as good. But anyway, it's really good. Also not sponsored by the line, or not sponsoring the line. This is not an endorsement, but also it's really yummy. Hashtag just my personal opinions, has nothing to do with the channel. Blah, 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 blah. Anyway, moving on. From Woolite Mammoth with the $10. I have celiac too. There are some decent gluten-free elbow pasta brands if you make it from scratch and okay box versions. There is hope. Okay, I appreciate it. We don't have to keep talking about mac. You're just making me hungrier.
Well, I have to talk about it some more because mac and cheese is even more American than you think. It was actually apparently popularized by Thomas Jefferson in the U.S.
USA. That's really
French
funny.
cuisine, top French cuisine. Bringing it here. This is the best we got.
Macaroni sounds Italian, not French.
At least the combination, my understanding is that...
okay, so the French invented Italy, cheese on things?
Well, let's also put it this way. Especially during the Napoleonic era, what parts of Italy got to be Frenched grew and shrank over time. All right, let's fire up our next one. Yes, boom. We got $6.66 from Jessica Chapel, they, them. I'm taking algebraic topology at the moment. Any topology concept either of you like? I learned a cup of coffee is isomorphic to a donut. You're really trying to make us hungry.
Yeah, right? How do you feel about algebraic topology?
I don't know enough to have good opinions.
Me neither, but there is something that I'm very fond of, which is closely related. I mean, it is explicitly related to the coffee cup isomorphism. There is a quantity called the Euler characteristic, which is probably invented by Euler, of course, because so were all things. The Euler characteristic, in some sense, for a shape anyway, for a three-dimensional polyhedron, counts something like the number of faces and the number of edges and the number of corners, and it comes up with some combination. It'll always be 2 for a convex polyhedron in 3 dimensions, which is really neat, like a surface in 3 dimensions. However, the Euler characteristic can actually be applied to smooth surfaces as well, compact smooth surfaces. And in fact, it is a very, very important topological invariant for describing Riemannian spaces, which is where a lot of my research ends up. So that's something I'm quite fond of. So once you learn about the Euler characteristic, then you'll learn about things like the Pfaffian, which is what you integrate to find the Euler characteristic, and all sorts of fun stuff. So Pfaffian is spelled with a P at the beginning, by the way, for those who don't know. And it's actually not PH, is what's even worse. It's PF for some reason. Anyway, our next super chat is from John Stephen Albert, the man with 3 names. Watch the movie Dark Star. It started out as John Carpenter's student film. It's a sci-fi comedy about a crew of hippies flying around in a spaceship demolishing unstable planets. It sounds fun.
It's his student film. It must have been from the 70s? Early 70s, even.
Probably. Have you seen...
Halloween was 78?
What's that movie? The parody of Star Trek?
Oh, Galaxy Quest.
Have you seen it? You must have.
Yes.
It's so good. It's arguably the best Star Trek film. Well, no, okay, Star Trek 4 is the best Star Trek film, but...
It's up there, for sure.
Yeah. It's definitely the best film Tim Allen has been in. And
yeah, that's true.
And it's probably the best Alan Rickman film outside of Die Hard and Harry Potter.
Give us the rated R cut of Galaxy Quest.
I just want Galaxy Quest 2, if there is a Galaxy Quest, if there isn't one. I feel like if there was, I would have seen it. Anyway, do we have, I think that was our last super chat.
Yeah, that's it.
That's it?
Yes.
Well, you know what that means? It means that it's time to end. Which means I'm free! I get to go eat... Well, I don't get to go eat mac and cheese. Rest in peace, mate. Anyway, thanks everybody for being here.
Go to patreon.com/online. Do it. Support the channel. Thank you. We appreciate it, everybody. Bye.
You hear that? That's the crew. The crew's the reason this show can actually function. We thank them so much. The mods, the screeners, thank you for making the show actually function. Thank you, thank you, thank you.